I never thought I'd be the kind of man who would walk away from his own honeymoon. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have laughed at the idea. Me? The guy who always planned for the future, who believed in love, who thought marriage was about partnership and understanding. But life has a funny way of showing you exactly how wrong you can be. It all started when I met Lena. She wasn't just beautiful. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and made it feel warmer, brighter. Like the air itself had shifted to accommodate her presence. She was confident, ambitious, and had this effortless charm that made people want to be around her. From our very first conversation, I was drawn to her. She had opinions, she had dreams, and she had a laugh that made me forget about everything else. I remember our first date vividly. We met at a cozy little restaurant downtown, one of those places with soft jazz playing in the background and candlelit tables that made everything seem a little more intimate. We talked about everything, our careers, our childhoods, the kind of future we saw for ourselves. She told me she worked in corporate finance, climbing her way up in a competitive firm, and I admired her drive. She admired mine, too. We seemed to fit, like two pieces of a puzzle finally finding their place. And then, there was her mother, Diane. She came up in conversation often. At first, it seemed normal. Most people are close to their parents, right? But with Lena, it was different. She didn't just love her mother, she needed her. Every decision, big or small, had Diane's fingerprints on it. If we planned a weekend trip, she had to check with Diane first. If she wanted to try a new restaurant, she'd ask Diane's opinion. Even the dress she wore on our fourth date? Diane had picked it out. It didn't alarm me at first. I thought, okay, they're close. Nothing wrong with that. My own mother had passed years ago, so maybe I just wasn't used to seeing that kind of bond. I told myself it was sweet, that it showed Lena was family-oriented. I didn't realize I was making excuses for something much, much deeper. The first real red flag came when I planned a surprise weekend getaway for Lena's birthday. It was supposed to be just the two of us, a quiet cabin by the lake, complete with wine, a fireplace, and no distractions. But when I gave her the tickets, she hesitated. "Wow, this looks amazing," she said, but her voice didn't match her words. I should check with Mom first." I laughed, thinking she was joking. Check with her? Lena, you're not asking for permission, right? She gave me a small smile, but she was already reaching for her phone. She just likes to know where I am. I watched her type out a message, my stomach sinking in a way I couldn't quite explain. She wasn't just telling her mother about the trip. She was waiting for approval. Sure enough, a few minutes later, she frowned at her screen. "Maybe we could go another time," she suggested. Mom was really hoping we'd have dinner with her this weekend. I should have seen it then. I should have understood what that meant. But love makes you ignore things you shouldn't, makes you explain away behavior that, in any other context, would set off alarms. So, instead of pressing the issue, I smiled and said, "Okay, next time." Next time never came. Months passed, and Lena and I continued to build a life together. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I loved her, and despite the constant presence of Diane in our relationship, I believed we were strong enough to handle anything. Every couple has their challenges, right? And sure, Lena's mother was involved, but that didn't mean she controlled Lena. Or so I thought. Looking back, I realize I spent a lot of time making excuses. I told myself Diane was just being protective, that Lena was used to being close to her mother, and that adjusting to a marriage dynamic would take time. I convinced myself that I was worrying over nothing. Then, the wedding planning began. Diane wasn't just involved, she took over. The guest list, the venue, the food, the music, every detail was micromanaged by her. I was an afterthought in my own wedding. There were moments when I felt like I was marrying into a pre-existing union, like Diane and Lena were the real couple, and I was just there to fill a role. One night, after yet another argument about something Diane insisted on changing, I asked Lena directly, "Do you even want to get married?" I asked her, my frustration bleeding into my tone. She looked at me like I had insulted her. "Of course I do. What kind of question is that? Then why does it feel like I have to ask for permission to be in this relationship?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's just, my mom has been there for me my whole life. I can't just ignore her opinions. No one's asking you to ignore her, I said. I'm asking you to put us first. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the floor, thinking, considering. Then, finally, she whispered, I don't know if I can. That was when I should have walked away. That was when I should have understood that this wasn't a we, it was always going to be them. But love makes fools of us all. I stayed. And staying led me to that moment, standing in front of Lena on our honeymoon departure day, staring at the train ticket she handed me like it was nothing, like it was fair, like it was perfectly reasonable that she and Diane would fly in comfort, while I was left to trail behind them, alone. And in that moment, something in me snapped. I looked at her, at the woman I had given my heart to, and I saw the truth. I would never come first. I would always be the outsider in my own marriage. So I smiled, took my suitcase, and said the words I knew she would never forget. You will regret this. And then, for the first time since I met Lena, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I walked away. If there was a single moment where I should have seen it all coming, it was the wedding. Looking back, I wonder how I let it get so far. Maybe I was blinded by love, or maybe I just didn't want to admit what was happening. Either way, the signs were all there, clear as day. At first, I was excited. Weddings are supposed to be about two people coming together, celebrating their love, making a promise to build a future. But from the moment Lena and I got engaged, it became painfully obvious that this wedding wasn't going to be about us. It was going to be about Diane. It started with the venue. Lena and I had discussed a small, intimate wedding. Nothing too extravagant, just close friends and family, something meaningful. We even found the perfect spot. A beautiful garden overlooking a lake, simple and elegant. Then Diane heard about it. That won't do at all, she said, waving off our idea like it was a bad meal she was sending back to the kitchen. Lena deserves something grand. A ballroom, chandeliers, the works. I laughed, thinking she was joking. We don't really want a huge wedding, I told her. Something small feels more personal. She gave me this condescending smile, the kind that made my skin crawl. Oh, sweetheart, you'll see. Weddings aren't about what the couple wants. They're about family. No, they're really not. They're about the two people getting married. But in Diane's world, everything revolved around her. Lena didn't push back. She never did. She just nodded and said, Mom does have a point. And just like that, our wedding was no longer ours. The guest list doubled, then tripled. Half the people on it were Diane's friends, people I had never even met. When I asked Lena why we needed so many strangers at our wedding, she shrugged. Mom says they're important. The food? Chosen by Diane. The music? Diane vetoed our DJ in favor of a live band, one of her old favorites from the 80s. The flowers? Diane's decision. The cake? Diane said vanilla was too boring and ordered some elaborate 4-tier monstrosity without even consulting us. At one point, I pulled Lena aside, trying to get her to see what was happening. Lena, this isn't our wedding anymore, I told her. It's your mom's. She sighed, already exhausted. It's just easier this way, she said. You know how she gets. Yeah, I did. But that wasn't the point. The real breaking point came when Diane inserted herself into the wedding party. Traditionally, the groom stands at the altar with his groomsmen, waiting for the bride. It's a quiet, nerve-wracking, beautiful moment. I imagine standing there, hands clasped, heart racing, watching Lena walk toward me. Diane had other ideas. 2 weeks before the wedding, she made an announcement. Not a suggestion, an announcement. I'll be walking Lena down the aisle. I nearly choked on my drink. What? She nodded, completely serious. I raised her. I deserved to be the one to give her away. I turned to Lena, expecting her to say something, anything, to stop this madness. She hesitated. Then, she nodded. I think it would mean a lot to her, she said softly. I stared at her, waiting for the part where she told me she was joking. But she wasn't. She actually thought this was okay. I had to leave the room before I said something I'd regret. The wedding day arrived, and from the moment I woke up, I felt like a guest at someone else's event. I stood at the altar, watching as Lena walked toward me. Not with her father, Not with a sibling, not alone like a woman making her own choices, but with Diane clutching her arm like she was the one getting married. It was a show, a performance, a Diane production starring her, with Lena as a supporting character. I should have left right then, but I didn't. I told myself I loved Lena. I told myself we'd figure things out. I told myself it was just one day, that the real marriage would be different. I was a fool. The reception wasn't any better. Diane had inserted herself at the head table, right next to Lena, not sitting with the other parents, not mingling with guests, but right next to the bride as if she were the second half of the couple. Then came the speeches. My best man gave a heartfelt toast about friendship, about how he'd watched me grow into the man I was today. It was short, funny, touching, the kind of speech you remember. Then Diane took the mic. She didn't toast us as a couple. She didn't welcome me into the family. No, she spent 10 minutes talking about Lena's childhood, how she raised her alone, how they had been through everything together, how they were inseparable. My name was mentioned once, barely. To my daughter, my best friend, my soulmate, she finished, raising her glass. May you always be as happy as we've been together. I drained my champagne in one gulp. I remember sitting there, forcing a smile, feeling like a complete idiot. Lena had chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. I kept up appearances. I smiled for pictures. I kissed my bride. I played my part. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going to work. By the time we got to our honeymoon departure, I was already half out the door. I just didn't know it yet. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership. Two people choosing to build a life together, navigating the highs and lows as a team. I walked into my marriage with Lena believing that, foolishly thinking once the wedding chaos settled, we could finally focus on each other. I thought we'd get a chance to be newlyweds, to find our rhythm, to exist without Diane looming over us like a shadow. I was wrong. The morning after our wedding, I woke up alone. At first, I thought Lena had gone to make coffee or take a shower, but when I checked my phone, I saw a text from her. Mom wanted to have breakfast together. Be back soon. Love you. I blinked at the screen. Breakfast? On the first morning of our marriage? I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. When she finally walked back into the hotel room, she was all smiles, holding a takeout bag. I brought you a croissant, she said cheerfully, as if that erased the fact that she had chosen to start her first day as my wife with Diane instead of me. I didn't say anything at the time. I just nodded, took the croissant, and told myself it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. Lena and I never really had a honeymoon phase because we were never alone. Diane was always there. Physically, emotionally, in every conversation, every decision. It wasn't that she was overbearing in the typical, overprotective mother way. It was worse than that. She acted like she and Lena were still a package deal, as if Lena's marriage didn't change a single thing about their relationship. We moved into our new apartment, my apartment, which I had owned for years before meeting Lena. The first night, as we were unpacking, Lena's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then at me. "It's Mom," she said, biting her lip. I exhaled. "You don't have to answer. We just spent all day moving. She can call tomorrow." She hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before picking up the call anyway. "Hey, Mom." "Yeah, we just finished moving in." "Oh, I miss you too." "What?" "No, I can't come over tonight, but maybe, oh, yeah, I guess I could swing by tomorrow morning." I stared at her as she agreed to go have breakfast with Diane. Again. "Lena," I said as soon as she hung up. "We just moved in. Don't you think we should spend some time together?" She sighed, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "I just don't want her to feel abandoned." "She's not abandoned," I said, struggling to keep my frustration in check. "You just got married. It's normal for things to change a little." She looked at me like I had suggested we cut off Diane completely. "She's been my best friend my whole life. I can't just ignore her now." "Who's asking you to ignore her?" I shot back. "I'm asking you to put us first for once." She frowned. "That's not fair." Fair. That word felt like a slap. Was it fair that we had barely spent a full day alone as husband and wife? Was it fair that Diane called constantly, that Lena dropped everything to answer? Was it fair that whenever I tried to express how this made me feel, I was painted as the unreasonable one. This became the pattern of our marriage. Mornings were interrupted by phone calls. Plans were changed because of Diane's needs. Anytime Lena and I wanted to make a decision, what furniture to buy, what restaurant to try, she had to check with her mother first. It didn't take long before Diane stopped even pretending to be subtle. One Saturday morning, Lena and I were supposed to go on a day trip to the mountains. I had planned everything: hiking, a nice lunch at a small cafe, some much-needed time away from the city. Then Diane called. "I need Lena to help me organize my closet," she said over the speakerphone. Lena glanced at me guiltily. "Mom, we were supposed to go hiking today." "Sweetheart, it won't take long. Plus, my arthritis has been acting up, and I really shouldn't be lifting anything heavy." Lena turned to me, eyes pleading. "I'll just be an hour, I promise." I clenched my jaw. Fine. An hour turned into 3, then 5. By the time she got home, the sun had set, and our entire day was wasted. She tried to smile at me. Mom and I ended up reorganizing more than just the closet. We did the whole bedroom. It was actually kind of fun. I didn't answer. I just nodded, walked into the bedroom, and shut the door. I started to realize something. Lena didn't think anything was wrong. To her, this was normal, expected. She wasn't struggling to balance her marriage and her mother because, in her mind, there was no balance to find. Diane came first. Always. One evening, after yet another canceled date night because Diane just needed a little help, I tried again. "Lena, we can't keep living like this," I said as gently as I could. "I need us to set some boundaries." She crossed her arms. "Why does it bother you so much that I'm close to my mom?" I ran a hand down my face, exhaling slowly. "Because she's in our marriage, Lena. Every single day. And it's pushing me out." "That's not true," she said defensively. "You're overreacting." I stared at her, feeling something break inside me. Overreacting. That was when I realized I wasn't going to win. This wasn't something Lena saw as a problem. And if she didn't see it as a problem, she was never going to fix it. The resentment grew like a slow-burning fire. I stopped fighting for time with my wife because I was tired of losing. I stopped arguing about the phone calls because I knew she'd answer them anyway. I stopped hoping things would change. And then came the moment that changed everything. The moment Lena handed me that train ticket on our honeymoon departure day. That was the moment I knew for certain. I wasn't a husband. I was just an extra in their story. I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there from the beginning. Diane's control, Lena's blind loyalty, the way every decision in our marriage had to be approved by her mother first. But despite everything, I still held on to this foolish hope that our honeymoon would be different, that it would be ours. That was my mistake. I had been counting down the days, convincing myself that this trip would be the turning point. A fresh start. 2 weeks away from Diane. Away from the constant phone calls. Away from the suffocating influence of a woman who had turned my wife into an extension of herself. Lena and I had agreed on a beautiful tropical destination. A place where we could unwind, enjoy each other's company, and finally have the time we never seemed to get at home. I imagined lazy mornings by the beach, candlelit dinners, uninterrupted conversations. Just us, as it should have been. Then, the night before we were supposed to leave, Lena dropped a bombshell. We were packing our bags in the bedroom when she hesitated, her fingers gripping the zipper of her suitcase a little too tightly. "Hey," she said casually, too casually. "So, my company only gave me 2 business class tickets for the flight." I looked up from my suitcase, expecting her to finish the sentence with something reasonable. Something like, "So I bought a 3rd ticket for you." Instead, she cleared her throat and continued, "I figured Mom would use the 2nd one, and you could take the train and meet us there." I froze. At first, I thought I had misheard her. Maybe my brain refused to process what she had just said because it was too absurd, too insulting to even be real. "I'm sorry." "What?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. Lena gave me a small, apologetic smile, the kind she used whenever she wanted to soften a blow. "It's not a big deal. The train ride is comfortable, and it's only a few hours longer than the flight. Plus, it's way cheaper than buying an extra business class ticket." I stared at her, waiting for the moment when she would realize how insane this sounded. She didn't. You're telling me, I said slowly, that on our honeymoon, Lena, you and your mother are flying in business class while I take a train like some afterthought? She sighed, clearly irritated that I wasn't just going along with this. It's not like that. Oh? Then what is it like? She rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. It's just a few hours apart. We'll all meet at the resort, and everything will be fine. That was it. That was the moment everything inside me just snapped. I wasn't even angry. Not at first. It was something colder than anger, something heavier. A realization. I had been holding on to an illusion, to a marriage that wasn't really a marriage. Lena wasn't my wife. She was Diane's daughter first, always. Every fight, every compromise I had made, every time I swallowed my frustration thinking things would get better, it had all been a waste. I exhaled slowly, gripping the handle of my suitcase. You will regret this, I said, my voice steady. Lena's expression faltered. What does that mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I zipped up my bag, pulled it off the bed, and walked past her. Where are you going? She called after me, finally sounding concerned. I paused at the door, looking over my shoulder. Somewhere I'm actually wanted. And then I left. The fallout. By the time I got downstairs and stepped outside, the evening air felt crisper than usual. It was like stepping into a different reality, one where I wasn't suffocating under the weight of someone else's expectations. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was going. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to that honeymoon. As I walked down the sidewalk, my phone started buzzing in my pocket. I didn't even need to check the screen to know who it was. I ignored the first call, then the second. By the third, I finally pulled my phone out and saw Lena's name flashing across the screen. I let it ring. She left a voicemail, her voice tight with frustration. This is ridiculous, okay? I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this. Just call me back and let's figure this out. Figure what out? She had already made her choice. And now, so had I. I found a hotel, checked in, and sat on the bed in silence for a long time. There was no anger, no heartbreak, just clarity. I wasn't the problem. I had spent so much time wondering if I was being unfair, if I was expecting too much, if I was the one who needed to compromise more. But no, this was never a real marriage. This was me being slotted into Diane's world, expected to play my part without complaint. I wasn't doing it anymore. Then, just as I was about to put my phone on silent, another call came in. Not Lena. Diane. I laughed. Actually laughed. Of course. I let it go to voicemail. This time, she didn't sound frustrated. She sounded furious. You have some nerve, Diane snapped. Do you have any idea how embarrassed Lena is? You're acting like a child. Get over yourself, and come to the airport before you ruin this whole trip. I deleted the voicemail. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The moment of regret. The next morning, as I was checking out of the hotel, my phone buzzed again. Lena. I considered ignoring it, but something told me to answer. Before I could even say hello, her voice came through, panicked. I don't know what to do, she stammered. They overbooked the flight, and Mom's throwing a fit at the gate. She's causing a scene, yelling at the attendants. People are staring. It's bad. They might not even let us board. I waited, letting the silence stretch. Can you come? She finally asked, her voice small. I smiled. Not because I was happy about her distress, but because this was the moment she finally understood. The moment she realized she needed me. But the thing was, I didn't need her. I inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly, and said the only thing left to say. No, Lena. You can figure this out without me. And then I hung up. The best part about freedom is how light it makes you feel. The worst part? How much you realize you were carrying before you finally dropped the weight. The morning after I walked out, I woke up in a hotel room that wasn't mine. In a bed that didn't hold any memories of Lena. No scent of her perfume on the pillow, no sound of her voice in the background, no buzzing phone calls from Diane. Just silence. And God, did it feel good. I took my time getting ready, not checking my phone once. I didn't care what Lena had to say, not last night, and certainly not this morning. I knew exactly how things had gone down at the airport. Diane had probably thrown a fit when their flight got delayed or overbooked, barking at the airline staff like she was some kind of royalty, while Lena stood beside her, uncomfortable but too spineless to say anything. That was their problem, not mine. I showered, got dressed, and grabbed my suitcase, ready to head out and figure out where I wanted to spend my sudden, unexpected solo vacation. But the moment I reached for my phone, curiosity got the best of me. Missed calls, 8. Voicemails, 4. Text messages, 13. I smirked. That was fast. The first voicemail was from Lena. "Babe, please, can we just talk? I know you're upset, but you just left. I wasn't expecting that. I thought you'd at least come to the airport, and we could figure things out. Call me, okay?" That was the nice one. The second voicemail? Less nice. "I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this. It was just a travel arrangement. It wasn't like I was abandoning you. You were still coming on the honeymoon." I rolled my eyes. If she really believed that, she was dumber than I thought. Then came the third message. And this one? Oh, this one was golden. I don't know what to do," she stammered. "They overbooked the flight, and Mom's throwing a fit at the gate. She's causing a scene, yelling at the attendants. People are staring. It's bad. They might not even let us board." I almost laughed. I could picture it perfectly. Diane standing at the counter, arms crossed, voice raised, demanding to speak to someone in charge. She was probably throwing around words like unacceptable and compensation, while Lena tried to keep her from fully combusting. And they wanted me there? To do what, exactly? The last voicemail was Lena's breaking point. "Please, just come to the airport." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to deal with this alone. I need you." I let out a slow breath. There it was. For the first time, she actually needed me. Not Diane. Me. But the thing was, it was already too late. I scrolled through the text messages. The first few were her trying to explain herself. Then came the "why are you ignoring me" texts. Then came the "we need to talk" ones. But my personal favorite was the one she sent just 20 minutes ago. "Lena, I don't know where you are, but this is not okay. You're my husband. You can't just walk away like this." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed out a response. "Me, you handed me a train ticket while you and your mom flew first class. I can, in fact, walk away." I didn't wait for her reply. I grabbed my suitcase, checked out of the hotel, and walked out into the world, a free man. Meanwhile, at the airport, Lena was unraveling. She sat hunched over in the airport lounge, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her heart was pounding in her ears, and she could still hear the echoes of her mother's voice as she yelled at the airline staff. They had been denied boarding, not because of an overbooked flight, but because Diane had made such a scene that the airline refused to let them on. And now, here she was, sitting in an airport with her mother, while her husband was gone. She checked her phone again. No response. He had read her last message. He had typed something back. And when she saw it, "You handed me a train ticket while you and your mom flew first class. I can, in fact, walk away." Her stomach dropped. He wasn't just upset. He was done. "Where is he?" Diane's voice cut through her panic. Lena looked up. Her mother was fuming, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "He's not coming," Lena said, her voice hollow. Diane scoffed. "Well, then he's just being dramatic. I told you from the beginning, he was too sensitive. A real man wouldn't just run off like that." Lena flinched. For the first time, her mother's words didn't comfort her. They didn't feel like an excuse she could cling to, because deep down, she knew the truth. She had pushed him away. She had ignored every sign, every warning, every moment when he had tried to tell her that things weren't okay. And now, when she actually needed him, when she was sitting in an airport, stranded, humiliated, and exhausted, he was nowhere to be found. And maybe he wasn't coming back. Diane sighed dramatically. "Well, come on, sweetheart. We'll just book another flight. Forget him. We don't need him ruining our trip." Lena's throat tightened. A week ago, she might have agreed. She might have followed her mother's lead, reassured herself that her husband was just throwing a tantrum and that everything would go back to normal. But now, she wasn't so sure. She looked down at her phone again, stared at his message, and for the first time in her life, she realized she had truly lost. The thing about walking away is that it doesn't hit you all at once. The relief, the clarity, it comes in waves. The first wave hit me the second I walked out of our apartment with my suitcase, leaving Lena standing there, holding a train ticket like it was some kind of joke. The second wave came when I checked into my hotel that night, stretched out on a bed that didn't smell like her perfume, and didn't hear Diane's voice in the background of a phone call she never let go unanswered. And now, the third wave was here. I was in a cab on my way to the airport, but not to follow them. I had booked my own trip, somewhere far, somewhere quiet, somewhere they wouldn't be. I wasn't the type of man to throw around ultimatums. I didn't make dramatic exits, and I didn't believe in petty revenge. But when Lena handed me that train ticket and expected me to just go along with it, something inside me shifted. That was the moment I realized I had been playing the wrong role in my own marriage. I wasn't a husband. I was an extra in the real love story, Lena and Diane's. And I was done being part of a story where I wasn't even the main character. The final goodbye. At the airport, I sat in the terminal, sipping coffee and waiting for my flight to board. It was strange, really, how come I felt. There was no anger, no bitterness, just a quiet understanding that I had made the right decision. And then, my phone rang. Lena. I let it ring. Then came a text. Lena, where are you? I smirked. For years, I had let her dictate my every move. She had scheduled our lives around her mother, her needs, her comfort. Not anymore. I typed back. Me moving on. The dots popped up, showing she was typing. Lena. Babe, please, we need to talk. Me. We should have talked before you handed me that train ticket, Lena. Her reply came fast. Lena. I wasn't trying to hurt you. It was just a mistake. Mistake. I leaned back in my chair, rolling the word around in my mind. That was the thing about mistakes. They happened by accident. This was a choice. She chose to put her mother first. She chose to dismiss my feelings. She chose to let Diane control our marriage. She chose, and now I was choosing too. I typed one final message. Me. Enjoy your honeymoon with your mother. I'll enjoy my trip, alone. Then, I blocked her number. I let out a slow breath, setting my phone down beside my coffee cup. It was over. Lena's breakdown. Meanwhile, back at her own gate, Lena gripped her phone so tightly her hands shook. Blocked. He had actually blocked her. Diane sat beside her, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Like this was just another day. Like Lena's marriage wasn't falling apart in real time. Lena swallowed hard. He's not answering. Diane scoffed. Good. Let him sulk. He'll come crawling back once he realizes how ridiculous he's being. Lena wasn't so sure. She had never seen him this way before. So calm, so certain. He hadn't shouted, hadn't begged, hadn't even fought for her. He had just left, like he had been ready to walk away for a long time. A lump formed in her throat. Mom, what if he doesn't come back? Diane sighed dramatically. Oh, please, sweetheart. Men don't leave good wives. He's just being emotional. Let him go on his little solo vacation. He'll get over it. Would he? Lena thought about their wedding, about how distant he had seemed when Diane had taken over. She thought about the countless times he had asked her to set boundaries with her mother, about the times she had ignored his frustration, dismissed his concerns. What if she had pushed him too far? What if this time, he really wasn't coming back? Her stomach twisted. She had always assumed he would stay. But what if she had been wrong? Freedom never felt so good. As my plane took off, I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath. This was the first time in years that I was doing something for myself. No compromises, no explanations, no Diane hovering over my shoulder like a ghost that refused to be exorcised. For so long, I had been bending, adjusting, shrinking myself to fit into Lena's world. But that was over. I looked out the window as the clouds rolled past, my mind already focused on the future. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally free. The thing about regret is that it doesn't hit you all at once. It sneaks up on you in quiet moments, in the spaces where you least expect it. And for Lena, That moment came the day she returned home, alone. The trip had been a disaster. After their flight had been delayed, thanks to Diane's tantrum, Lena and her mother had finally made it to the resort, but it wasn't the honeymoon she had envisioned. Instead of romantic dinners and long walks on the beach, she spent every moment with Diane, sitting in silence, picking at her food, staring at the empty seat across from her that should have belonged to her husband. But he wasn't there, because she had pushed him away. And now, as she dragged her suitcase through the front door of their apartment, the place felt different. It wasn't just empty. It was hollow, stripped of something vital. She dropped her bags by the door and called out instinctively, "I'm home." Silence. Her chest tightened. She had spent years assuming he would always be there, that no matter how many times she put her mother first, he would wait, that he would understand. But now, looking around the apartment, reality set in. Something felt off. She walked into the bedroom and froze. His side of the closet? Empty. His drawers? Cleared out. The books on his nightstand? Gone. Panic surged through her as she rushed through the apartment, checking every room, opening every cabinet, as if she would find some sign that he was still here, that he hadn't actually left. But he had. He had really left. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the bed, gripping her phone with shaky hands. She dialed his number. The call didn't even ring. Blocked. Her breath hitched, and a sob clawed its way up her throat. Diane's reaction. When Diane arrived later that evening, she barely batted an eye at the situation. "Sweetheart, stop crying. It's not the end of the world." Lena lifted her tear-streaked face, her voice raw. "He left me." Diane sighed, shaking her head. "He's being dramatic. He'll come crawling back once he realizes how lucky he was to have you." Lena swallowed hard. What if he didn't? She had believed, for so long, that her mother was always right, that Diane knew best. But now? Now, she wasn't so sure. Her husband had warned her. He had told her over and over that this wasn't sustainable, that he needed her to choose him sometimes, that he needed to feel like he was a priority. And every single time, she had ignored him. Now, she was paying the price. Diane waved a dismissive hand. "Give it time. He'll cool off, and then you can talk some sense into him." But Lena wasn't so sure anymore. Her mother had never been wrong before. At least, not in Lena's mind. Diane had always told her that men were replaceable, that the only relationship that truly mattered was the one between them. And for so long, Lena had believed that. But now she was beginning to see the truth. Her mother had never had a successful relationship. Her mother had never been married. Her mother had never been in love. So why had she let Diane control hers? A cold realization settled in Lena's chest. She had been so afraid of disappointing her mother that she had lost the only person who truly loved her. And there was no guarantee he was coming back. The next morning, Lena sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone, debating whether to call from another number. Would he pick up? Would he even listen? She took a deep breath and texted his best friend instead. "Lena, I know he doesn't want to hear from me, but please, can you just tell me if he's okay?" A few minutes later, she got a reply. "Best friend. He's better than he's been in years." The words hit her harder than she expected. She had assumed he was heartbroken, that he was suffering just like she was. But he wasn't. He was happy, because she was no longer in his life. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She had convinced herself that he needed her, that he would always stay no matter how much she took him for granted. But she had been wrong. And now, she was alone. Over the next few weeks, the silence in the apartment became unbearable. Every morning, she woke up reaching for him, only to remember he was gone. She didn't delete his contact. She couldn't. She reread their old messages, stared at their wedding photos, tried to remember the last time she had truly made him feel loved. And she couldn't, because it had always been about Diane. One afternoon, she picked up the phone and called her mother. "I miss him," she admitted. "I think I really messed up." Diane sighed. "Lena, enough with this nonsense. You're better off without him." A long pause. And then, for the first time in her life, Lena asked the question she had never dared ask before. "Mom, have you ever been in love?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then, finally, Diane's voice came through, clipped, irritated. Love makes people weak. You don't need it. And in that moment, Lena finally saw her mother for who she really was. A woman who had never known love. A woman who had never truly been happy. A woman who had made sure her daughter followed in her footsteps. Lena had listened to her mother. She had trusted her. And now, she was paying the price. Because her husband was gone. And deep down, she knew he wasn't coming back. There's something surreal about watching your life fall apart and realizing you don't miss it. Not even a little. I should have been heartbroken. That's what everyone expects after a failed marriage, right? To grieve, to doubt, to wonder if you made the right choice. But instead, I woke up every morning feeling lighter. No more walking on eggshells. No more competing with Diane for Lena's attention. No more feeling like a guest in my own life. For the first time in years, I was free. The first thing I did after returning from my trip was get my own place. Not an apartment filled with memories of Lena. Not a space that held echoes of arguments and resentment. I wanted something new, something untouched by the past. I found a loft in the city. Nothing too extravagant, but mine. The moment I signed the lease, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself I hadn't even realized I'd lost. Decorating it was oddly therapeutic. No compromise, no second opinions, no let me check with my mom, nonsense. Just me, making choices for myself. And damn, did it feel good. Of course, Lena didn't let go easily. The first time she tried to reach me after I blocked her, she used a different number. I answered without thinking, only to hear her breath hitch on the other end of the line. Hey, she said softly, like we hadn't just torn each other's lives apart. I didn't respond. She sighed. I know you hate me right now. I still didn't speak. I miss you, she finally whispered. Can we talk? For a moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered standing at the airport, reading her message, realizing she had never chosen me. So I said the only thing left to say. No. And I hung up. Instead of wallowing, I threw myself into work. Being a husband to Lena had felt like a full-time job. Now that I was free, I had all this extra time. And I used it to build myself up. I took on new projects, networked with people I had lost touch with, started focusing on my health again. It didn't take long for people to notice the change. You seem lighter, one of my colleagues remarked one day over lunch. I laughed, taking a sip of my coffee. I am. Because I was. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying someone else's baggage. The universe has a twisted sense of humor because, a few months later, I ran into Lena. I was at a cafe, working on some reports, when I heard a familiar voice say my name. I looked up, and there she was. She looked different. Not in an obvious way, but in the way people do when they've been through something they didn't think they'd survive. She hesitated before sitting across from me, clutching her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her together. I waited. Finally, she spoke. I just wanted to see you. I leaned back in my chair, watching her. And she swallowed hard. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I get it now, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't back then, but I do now. I pushed you away. I let my mom control everything and she exhaled shakily. I lost you because of it. I stared at her for a long moment. This was the apology I had once desperately wanted. But now, it didn't mean anything. I'm glad you understand, I said simply. She blinked, clearly expecting more. That's it? I shrugged. What else is there? A flash of something crossed her face. Regret? Maybe. Do you think? She hesitated. Do you think we could ever try again? I smiled. Not out of malice, not out of smugness, but because I had never been so sure of something in my life. No, Lena. Her breath hitched. You had me, I told her, and you lost me. She stared at her coffee, nodding slowly. I deserve that. I didn't say anything, because she did. A better future. A few days after that encounter, I got a message from a mutual friend. Friend, just thought you should know, Lena's still living with her mom. If anything, They seem even closer now. I read the message, waiting for some kind of emotion to hit me. Regret? Sadness? Pity? Nothing. I typed out a quick reply. Me, that's not my problem anymore. And it wasn't. Because while Lena was still trapped in Diane's world, I had built one of my own. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was truly, finally, happy. 5 years. That's how long Lauren and I had been together. 5 years of birthdays, anniversaries, lazy Sundays, and late-night conversations about absolutely nothing. 5 years of me pretending I hated reality TV while secretly knowing every contestant's backstory just to keep up with her rants. 5 years of her rolling her eyes at my obsession with 90s cartoons, and me teasing her about her ridiculous coffee order, 4 pumps of vanilla, 2 shots of espresso, oat milk, and a drizzle of caramel. 5 years of love. And now? Now I was sitting in my car, staring at the engagement ring on my finger, wondering if I had been a complete idiot to believe we were solid. We met at a housewarming party. The kind of overcrowded, humid apartment gathering where everyone is either sweating or pretending they're not. I had been dragged there by my best friend, Marcus, who swore I needed to get out more. Lauren had come with her best friend, Tessa, self-proclaimed life of the party. We ended up next to each other at the makeshift bar, a cluttered countertop stacked with half-empty liquor bottles. Some guy tried handing us IPAs, and at the exact same time, we both cringed. God, no. We looked at each other, shared an amused smirk, and just like that, we clicked. That night, we talked for hours about everything: bad drinks, old cartoons, and what we'd do if we won the lottery. Her answer: travel the world. Mine: buy a ranch and rescue dogs. After that, we were inseparable. Dating felt easy, natural. There was no overanalyzing texts, no power games. It was just us. After a year, we officially became a couple. After 2 years, we moved in together. By year 3, we adopted Benny, the high-energy rescue dog she swore completed our little family. And by year 5, I knew I wanted to marry her. Our engagement wasn't dramatic. No skywriting, no flash mobs. Just a quiet Saturday morning hike at our favorite lookout point. I had planned a speech, something heartfelt about how much I loved her. But when I pulled out the ring, all I could get out was, "Marry me." She didn't hesitate. She just smiled and said yes. That was last summer. We started planning the wedding immediately. Well, she started planning. I mostly nodded and gave the occasional "whatever you want, babe," when asked about flower arrangements and seating charts. The date was set for October, and everything was falling into place. Or at least, I thought it was. The slow shift. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. They started creeping in 3 months ago. At first, it was subtle. Whenever I brought up the wedding, Lauren would hesitate before responding. Nothing huge, just a half-second pause before nodding or changing the subject. I ignored it. Then came the passive comments. Do we really need to invite all these people? It's a lot of money for just one day. Are we sure we want a big wedding? Again, I brushed it off. Budget concerns, maybe. Stress. It happens. Then came the late replies to my texts about wedding plans. I'd send a list of caterers, and hours later, I'd get a one-word response. Sure. I convinced myself she was just busy. She started spending more time with Tessa, going out more, staying out later. It was normal, right? She needed her girl time. Except, when she came home, she was distant. Less affectionate. Always checking her phone. I told myself it was nothing. Until last Friday. The dinner that changed everything. Marcus had suggested I do something special for Lauren. Something to shake off the stress, remind us why we were getting married in the first place. So I booked a table at Vincenzo's, an Italian place she had been dying to try. I even stocked the fridge with her favorite oat milk caramel drink, thinking she'd appreciate the small gesture. But from the moment we sat down, I felt it. Lauren was distracted, barely engaging in conversation. She kept glancing at her phone, smiling at something or someone. Halfway through dinner, I brought up the honeymoon plans, trying to pull her back into excitement. That's when she hit me with it. I don't know if I'm ready for all this. Not just the honeymoon, the wedding, the marriage. 5 years together, 8 months engaged. And now she wasn't sure? She mentioned Tessa's stories about bad marriages, about how things changed after the honeymoon phase. Then she brought up her parents' divorce, saying she had been thinking a lot about whether we were making a mistake. I barely touched my food after that. The car ride home was silent. At our apartment, I asked if she wanted to talk. She said she needed time to think. Then she grabbed a blanket, curled up on the couch, and fell asleep while I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The bar incident. The next morning, she barely looked at me. She mumbled something about meeting Tessa and some friends for drinks at Duffy's sports bar. Fine. Whatever. I stayed home, numbly scrolling through my phone until I got a text from Jake, one of Lauren's coworkers. Jake, hey man, you okay? Me, yeah, why? A few seconds later, my phone rang. Jake's voice was hesitant. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but things got weird at the bar tonight. I braced myself. Weird how? Jake sighed. They were teasing Lauren about the wedding. Someone asked if she was ready to be with one guy forever. And he hesitated. She laughed and said, if Daniel were more handsome and richer, I'd be excited to marry him. I felt numb. Are you sure she said that? Dude, a bunch of us heard it. Some people called her out, but she just brushed it off as a joke. A joke. AF *****ing joke. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. When I finally walked inside, she was passed out on the couch, completely oblivious to the damage she had just done. I stood there, staring at her. The woman I had planned to spend my life with. The woman I had trusted more than anyone. And for the first time in 5 years, I didn't recognize her. The worst part? This morning, her mom called me in tears, saying there was something I needed to know. And if I thought last night was bad, I had no idea what was coming next. I didn't sleep that night. After the way Lauren dropped that bomb at dinner, I don't know if I'm ready for all this. There was no way I could. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her slow, even breathing from the couch. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just shattered 5 years of certainty in a single sentence. I replayed our entire relationship in my head, searching for the moment when things changed. Because it had changed. I could feel it. The late replies. The hesitation when we talked about the wedding. The growing distance between us. I had convinced myself it was stress. Wedding planning fatigue. But now I wasn't so sure. By the time morning rolled around, I was exhausted but still too wired to sleep. I got up, made coffee, and waited for Lauren to wake up. I was ready to talk, to really talk, to figure out what was happening to us. But instead, she just brushed past me, barely acknowledging my existence. Morning. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just morning. Then she mentioned something about meeting up with Tessa and some work friends for drinks at Duffy's sports bar. I wanted to ask, are we going to talk about last night? About the fact that you just admitted you might not even want to marry me? But I didn't. I just nodded and let her go. Because maybe I didn't want the answer. Maybe I already knew. The phone call that changed everything. Lauren had been gone for about 3 hours when I got the text from Jake, one of her co-workers I had met a couple of times at work events. Jake, hey man, you okay? That was weird. Me, yeah, why? A few seconds later, my phone rang. I picked up, and the second I heard Jake's hesitant tone, my stomach sank. Look, I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but things got weird at the bar tonight. Weird how? He sighed. Some of the girls were teasing Lauren about the wedding, asking if she was really ready to settle down. And he hesitated. She laughed and said, if Daniel were more handsome and richer, I'd be excited to marry him. Silence. I couldn't breathe. Are you sure she said that? Dude, a bunch of us heard it. Some people even called her out, but she just waved it off as a joke. A joke. That was her excuse? I don't even remember hanging up. All I remember is sitting in my car, gripping the steering wheel, feeling like the ground had disappeared from under me. I had given her everything. 5 years. My love. My trust. My future. And that's what I got in return? I should have walked away that night. I should have left. Instead, I drove home. And when I walked in, she was passed out on the couch, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just publicly humiliated me in front of all her friends. Like she hadn't just broken everything. I stood there, staring at her. And for the first time, I felt nothing. Her half-assed apology. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. Lauren's standard apology breakfast. I walked into the kitchen, and there she was, acting like everything was fine. Like we hadn't had the worst night of our relationship. Like she hadn't laughed about my looks and my bank account in front of her friends. She smiled at me like she wasn't the reason I had spent the entire night questioning my worth. Hey, I made breakfast. I didn't sit down. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, Waiting. Finally, she sighed. I know Jake probably called you. So she knew. She knew what she did. And yet, she still went to sleep, still woke up like nothing was wrong. I crossed my arms. Yeah, he did. Want to explain? Lauren bit her lip, looking guilty for about half a second before she launched into her excuse. It was just a stupid joke, Daniel. We were drinking, and everyone was giving me a hard time about the wedding. I said something dumb to shut them up. I didn't mean it. I stared at her. You didn't mean it? She groaned, already defensive. Come on. You know what I meant. I felt something snap inside me. Actually, I don't. So why don't you explain it to me? She folded her arms across her chest, like she was the one who had been wronged. Daniel, you're overreacting. I was drunk. It wasn't serious. I let out a hollow laugh. Right? So you accidentally insulted me in front of all your friends? You accidentally joked about how I'm not good enough for you. She rolled her eyes. You're twisting my words. No, Lauren. I'm finally hearing them clearly. Her face softened a little then, like she realized she had pushed too far. She stepped closer. Babe, you know I love you. I just got caught up in the moment. I wasn't thinking. I took a step back. That's the problem, Lauren. It was easy for you to say. That's what's scaring me the most. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. And for the first time, I saw it, the flash of panic in her eyes. Because I wasn't just mad. I was done. Walking away. I didn't say anything else. I just turned around, grabbed my car keys, and walked out. I didn't even know where I was going. But I knew I couldn't stay. I ended up at my brother Jason's apartment. He took one look at me, opened the door wider, and said, She screwed up, didn't she? I let out a shaky breath. Yeah, she did. He handed me a beer. You want to talk about it? I shook my head. Not yet. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt relief. Like I had finally stopped trying to hold on to something that wasn't there anymore. I wasn't ready to end things yet. Not officially. Not until I knew the full truth. Because something in my gut told me that this wasn't the worst of it. And I was right. Because the next morning, I got a call from Diane, Lauren's mom. She was crying. And she said there was something I needed to know. Something that would change everything. I sat in my brother Jason's apartment, staring at my phone. The screen was still lit up from the last call. Diane, Lauren's mom. She had been crying. Really crying. Not the type of polite, sniffly crying people do when they feel bad about something, but the kind of crying that makes words come out broken. Daniel, there's something you need to know. I hadn't even had time to process the last 24 hours. Lauren's confession of doubt at dinner, the humiliation at the bar, her half-assed apology over eggs and bacon like that could somehow undo what she had said. And now her mother was calling me, in tears. Something was very, very wrong. I took a deep breath and called her back. She picked up immediately. Daniel. Her voice was shaky, like she had been waiting by the phone, hoping I'd call her back. Diane, what's going on? She let out a trembling sigh. I didn't want to say anything until Lauren told you herself. But now what? My voice was sharp. I didn't have patience for vague dramatics. Now I don't think she will. I sat up straighter. Tell me what? A pause. And then, there's someone else. The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. I felt my stomach drop, my throat go dry. Who? Diane hesitated. His name is Adam. He works with her. I clenched my jaw. Adam. I knew that name. I had heard it before, casually dropped in conversations. Lauren had mentioned him in passing, nothing that ever set off alarms. Just Adam came up with a great idea today, or Adam's so funny, you'd like him. I didn't like him now. Are you telling me Lauren cheated? My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before the storm. Diane sniffled. No, I don't think so. But, another hesitation. She told me she's been talking to him a lot. She said she feels something for him. And she's confused about her feelings for you. I let out a slow breath, gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might crack. Confused. That word made my blood boil. We were engaged. We had a wedding planned. She was supposed to be my wife. And now she was confused? Diane's voice softened. Daniel, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I didn't want you walking into this blind. I love you like a son. And if Lauren isn't being honest with you, then I have to be. I closed my eyes for a long moment, trying to suppress the rage building in my chest. Does she know you're telling me this? Another pause. No, of course not. I swallowed hard. Thank you, Diane, for telling me. She exhaled, like she had been holding her breath. I just don't want you getting hurt more than you already have. I was already hurt. But now I was angry. The confrontation. I drove back to the apartment, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. By the time I parked outside our building, I was vibrating with adrenaline. She had been lying to me. She had been pulling away, spending more time with Tessa, making snide little comments about the wedding. And the entire time, she had been developing feelings for another man. Lauren wasn't confused. She was waiting for a better option. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. Like she hadn't completely wrecked me. She looked up, startled by the fury on my face. "Daniel? What's wrong?" I didn't answer immediately. I just stared at her. And then I said, "How long have you had feelings for Adam?" The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And that silence? That was my answer. I let out a humorless laugh, shaking my head. "Wow. Daniel, you lied to me." My voice was eerily calm. "You sat across from me last night and let me believe your doubts were just pre-wedding jitters. You let me think I was the problem, that maybe I wasn't doing enough. But the entire time, you were thinking about someone else." She stood up quickly. "I didn't cheat on you. That's not the point, Lauren." My voice was sharp. "You let yourself fall for another guy while you were engaged to me." She flinched. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "Yeah." I let out a bitter chuckle. "Well, I didn't mean to waste 5 years of my life on someone who would throw it away for a guy she just met. But here we are." Tears welled in her eyes. "Daniel, I love you. I got scared." "Scared of what?" "Of choosing the wrong person." I took a step back, letting that sink in. 5 years. And she was still wondering if I was the wrong person. I nodded slowly. "Okay." She blinked. "What?" "Okay." I grabbed my jacket and my car keys. "Then let me make the decision easier for you." Her eyes widened. "Daniel, wait." "No," I cut her off, voice cold. "I'm done waiting for you to decide if I'm good enough. I'm done being your safe option. If you're confused, then be confused. But don't expect me to stick around while you figure it out." She reached for me, but I stepped back. For the first time in 5 years, I felt completely, utterly done. Lauren had been my world, but I wasn't hers. And I deserved to be somebody's first choice. Walking away, I spent the night at Jason's again. I expected to feel grief, but mostly, I just felt relief. I was tired. Tired of fighting for someone who wasn't fighting for me. Lauren texted me that night. Called. Left voicemails. I ignored them all. Then, the next morning, I got another text. Not from Lauren. From Adam. "Daniel, I know you don't know me well, but can we talk? There's something I think you should know." I stared at my phone. What else could there possibly be? And why would the other guy want to tell me? I took a deep breath and typed out a response. Where and when? Because if I was going to burn this bridge, I wanted to make sure I saw every single piece of it fall. I stared at the text for a long time. Adam, the guy Lauren had apparently developed feelings for. The one she had been thinking about while I was busy planning our wedding. And now he wanted to talk? I should have ignored it. I should have deleted the message and moved on. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because if there was still more to this story, I wanted to hear it from him. So I responded. Where and when? Less than a minute later, my phone buzzed. Adam, Coffee House on Lincoln. 10 a.m. tomorrow. The meeting. The next morning, I pulled into the parking lot of Coffee House on Lincoln, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. An apology? A confession? Some desperate attempt to clear his conscience? Whatever it was, I just wanted the truth. I stepped inside and immediately spotted him. Adam. He was sitting in the back, nursing a cup of coffee, looking every bit as uncomfortable as I felt. His hair was slightly disheveled, and he looked like he hadn't slept much either. Good. I walked over, slid into the chair across from him, and folded my arms. Talk. Adam sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. I'm just going to get straight to it. I didn't know Lauren had feelings for me. I narrowed my eyes. You expect me to believe that? He nodded. Yeah, because it's the truth. I didn't say anything, just waited. He let out a breath. Look, man, I don't want to be involved in this. I have a girlfriend. We've been together for 3 years. I don't look at Lauren that way. Never have. That made me pause. What? He nodded again. Lauren and I work on the same project team. We talk, sure, but it's all work-related. Occasionally, we joke around, but nothing inappropriate. And then last week, Tessa started dropping comments about how Lauren and I make a good pair. Tessa, of course. I clenched my jaw. So Lauren made all this up in her head? Adam hesitated. Not exactly. I leaned forward. Explain. He sighed. I think Tessa had a hand in it. She kept pushing Lauren, telling her that she should be sure before settling down. That if she had any doubts, maybe it was a sign. And then she started bringing me up. I felt a sharp sting of betrayal. Lauren's doubts hadn't just appeared out of nowhere. They had been fed to her, nurtured by the people around her. And she let them grow. She let them get big enough to destroy us. Adam kept talking. Last Thursday, I overheard Tessa telling Lauren that she thought I was into her. That I was probably waiting for her to call off the wedding. I frowned. And what did Lauren say? His expression darkened. She said she didn't know how she felt. That she wasn't sure about marrying you. And then, she asked if I had ever thought about her that way. My stomach twisted. I inhaled sharply, trying to keep my face neutral. And he shook his head. I told her no. I told her I was happy in my relationship, and that she needed to figure out what she wanted before making any big decisions. But she looked lost. Like she didn't know what to do. Lost. Like she had no idea that she was actively destroying the life we built together. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Why are you telling me this? Adam ran a hand through his hair. Because I don't want you thinking I had anything to do with it. I didn't encourage her. I didn't lead her on. And I sure as hell don't want to be the reason your engagement falls apart. I studied him for a long moment, searching for any sign of deception. But there was nothing. He was telling the truth. Lauren had built this entire fantasy in her head. And she was willing to burn our relationship to the ground for it. Reality sinks in. I didn't say much after that. I thanked Adam for telling me, paid for my coffee, and walked out. By the time I got to my car, the weight of it all crashed down on me. The wedding was over. The life I had planned gone. Lauren had spent the past few months wondering if I was the right choice, while I had spent the past few months thinking she was the only choice. And I was done being her backup plan. I pulled out my phone, scrolled down to Lauren's number, and hit call. She picked up on the second ring. Daniel. Her voice was small, hesitant, like she already knew. We're done. Silence. Daniel. Don't. Just don't. My voice was sharp. You know why? You know exactly why. And I'm not going to spend another second of my life trying to convince you to choose me. She exhaled shakily. I was just confused. Yeah? Well, I'm not. Not anymore. A long pause. Then, in the quietest voice I had ever heard from her, I'm sorry. I squeezed my eyes shut. Too late. Too damn late. So am I. And then I hung up. Aftermath. I wish I could say it was easy after that. That I woke up the next day feeling relieved and free. But grief doesn't work that way. Some mornings, I woke up reaching for her, before I remembered she wasn't there anymore. Some nights, I stared at the engagement ring sitting in its box, wondering how the hell we got here. But then, slowly, things got easier. I focused on me again. I went back to the gym. I reconnected with old friends. I booked a solo trip to a cabin upstate, because why not? And 3 weeks later, I got a text from Diane. Diane, I just wanted to check in on you. You deserve better. I hope you know that. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. I did deserve better. And one day, I'd find it. But for now, I was just going to enjoy being me again. And that was enough. The day after I ended things with Lauren, I woke up feeling nothing. No rage. No grief. No confusion. Just emptiness. I had spent the past few months trying to hold on to a relationship that was already gone, bending over backward to prove to a woman who had stopped choosing me that I was worth it. Now, I didn't have to fight anymore. Now it was just me. But there were still loose ends to tie up. The apartment. The wedding cancellations. Our life together, packed into boxes and divided like assets in a business deal. I didn't want to see her again. I had nothing left to say. But life doesn't let you walk away that cleanly. Not when you've spent 5 years building a future with someone. And so, I found myself standing in our apartment one last time, waiting for her to come and collect her things. Waiting for the final goodbye. The apartment that wasn't home anymore. The place was too quiet without her. For the past 3 days, I had been staying at my brother Jason's, giving Lauren time to pack, while I figured out where the hell I was supposed to go from here. But I had to come back to make sure we divided everything properly. The apartment felt different now. Hollow. The walls still held the ghosts of our life together. Her favorite blanket draped over the arm of the couch. The framed pictures we had taken on our anniversary still hanging on the wall. Except now, the pictures meant nothing. The memories meant nothing. I had taken down the engagement photos first. I couldn't look at them anymore. I was boxing up the last of my things when the door opened. And there she was, Lauren. For a second, we just stared at each other. She looked different. Her hair was tied back, and her face was bare. No makeup, no careful presentation. Just her. For years, I had loved that face. For years, I had built a future around that face. But now, it just looked like a stranger's. She shifted awkwardly in the doorway, eyes darting to the half-packed boxes scattered across the apartment. Hey. I didn't answer. I just turned back to taping up a box, the sound of the ripping tape louder than any words she could have said. She sighed, stepping inside. I'll just grab my stuff. I nodded, but didn't look at her. I didn't want to see her sadness. I didn't want to care. She moved around quietly, picking up things that belonged to her. Her books, her clothes, the ridiculous collection of throw pillows she had insisted on buying. At some point, she stopped in front of me, holding a framed picture. Our first vacation together. Do you want to keep this? I glanced at it briefly. We were smiling, arms wrapped around each other on a beach in Florida, tan and happy, like we had forever ahead of us. I reached out, took the frame, and without hesitation, dropped it into the trash. Her breath hitched. I didn't care. She was the one who threw us away first. The last conversation. We worked in silence for almost an hour. Until finally, there was nothing left to divide. Lauren stood near the door, her bags packed, keys in her hand. I guess that's everything, she murmured. I nodded. Yeah. A long pause. Then, I don't know what to say. I let out a humorless laugh. That's a first. She flinched, looking down. I never meant to hurt you. I scoffed. Yeah? Well, you did. She swallowed hard. I loved you, Daniel. I finally looked at her then. Past tense. Loved. Not love. Not anymore. I nodded slowly. I loved you too. And that was the last time I ever would. She bit her lip, eyes glassy, but she didn't cry. Maybe she had used up all her tears before she even told me the truth. Or maybe, deep down, she knew she didn't have the right to cry. Not after everything. Do you think we'll ever talk again? She asked. I met her gaze, steady, certain. No. She inhaled sharply, but she nodded. Okay. Another pause. Then, goodbye, Daniel. I didn't say it back. I just turned away. And a few seconds later, I heard the door close behind her. For the first time in 5 years, I was alone. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt free. The aftermath. I didn't cry. I didn't get drunk. I didn't sit in the dark, listening to sad music like some cliché. I just existed. It was strange at first. The silence. The emptiness. But slowly, it became peace. I returned the wedding suit I never got to wear. Canceled the honeymoon trip and used part of the refund to book a solo trip instead. A week in a cabin by the mountains. Just me, my thoughts, and the quiet. I stopped waiting for a message that would never come. I stopped expecting to see her things around the apartment. I stopped missing her. And then, one day, I woke up and realized. I was happy. A new beginning. 3 months after our final goodbye, I ran into Marcus at a bar. He slapped me on the back, grinning. Damn, man. You look good. I smirked. Yeah. He nodded. Yeah. Like you dodged a bullet. I took a sip of my drink, thinking about it. A bullet. Maybe. But more than that, I felt like I had finally woken up. Lauren had been my past. But now, I was ready for the future. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. The first morning after Lauren left, I woke up expecting to feel something. Anger, regret, sadness, maybe even relief. Instead, I felt nothing. Just silence. No clatter of her getting ready in the morning. No faint hum of her singing off-key while making coffee. No familiar scent of vanilla and citrus from her shampoo lingering in the bathroom. Just me. For 5 years, I had shared this space with her. Now, it was just an apartment. 4 walls and a bunch of furniture that no longer held any meaning. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the half-empty room, waiting for some kind of overwhelming emotion to hit me. But all I felt was hollow. Not broken. Not devastated. Just empty. And maybe that was worse. The lingering reminders. I tried to distract myself. I went to work, answered emails, took calls, and pretended everything was normal. It wasn't. Because normal was checking my phone throughout the day, expecting a text from Lauren. Normal was having dinner with her after a long shift, talking about our days. Normal was planning a wedding, not canceling one. Now, normal was walking into an apartment that felt too big, cooking for one, sleeping on one side of the bed out of habit, even though the other side would never be occupied again. Normal was undoing 5 years of muscle memory. The worst part was the small things, like reaching for my phone to send her something funny before remembering that we didn't do that anymore. Or walking into the grocery store and automatically grabbing the brand of almond milk she liked before realizing I didn't need to buy it anymore. Or seeing a couple at the park sitting on a bench, laughing, and feeling that tiny, stupid pang of jealousy because that used to be us. The reminders were everywhere, and they were exhausting. Social media hell. I knew I should have just deleted her from everything, blocked her number, unfollowed, moved on. But some part of me still hesitated. Not because I wanted her back, not because I still had hope, but because I wasn't ready to face the finality of it. Lauren and I had been together for 5 years. That meant 5 years of tagged photos, inside jokes, and comments on each other's posts. Our relationship had been documented in likes, captions, and Instagram stories. And now it was all just digital ghosts. I finally changed my relationship status a week after she left. The second I hit single, my phone exploded with messages. Some from old friends checking in, others from distant relatives who had no business asking what happened. A couple from people I barely talked to, suddenly acting concerned when I knew damn well they were just fishing for gossip. And then there was Lauren's post. She didn't post about the breakup. She just posted a picture of a sunset with some vague-ass caption about how change is painful but necessary. It took everything in me not to roll my eyes, because I didn't need a poetic sunset post to remind me that she had changed. I had spent the last few months watching it happen in real time. Breaking the wedding news. Canceling a wedding isn't as easy as just making a phone call. There were deposits, vendors, emails, and a guest list of over 100 people who needed to be informed. I started with the venue. The woman on the phone was polite, apologizing for the loss of our deposit and offering her sympathies like I had just experienced a death. In a way, maybe I had. Then came the calls to the florist, the DJ, the photographer. Every time, I had to repeat the same sentence. We're calling off the wedding. I could hear the pity in their voices. I hated it. But the worst call was to my mom. I had put it off for as long as possible, dreading the conversation. She answered on the second ring. Hey, sweetheart. How's everything going? I exhaled slowly. Mom, the wedding's off. Silence. Then, oh, honey. She didn't ask why. She didn't demand an explanation. She just knew. And somehow, that made it worse. Are you okay? She asked gently. I don't know. She sighed. You will be. I wanted to believe that. I really did. Cutting the last ties. Lauren still had a few things left at the apartment. I texted her, telling her to send someone to pick them up. She responded quickly. Lauren, can we talk? Just for a minute? I stared at the message for a long time. A few weeks ago, I would have jumped at the chance. I would have driven to her, demanded explanations, asked her to tell me she had made a mistake. Now, I just felt tired. There's nothing left to talk about. She didn't respond. That was the last time we ever texted. A few days later, Tessa came by to pick up the rest of her stuff. She didn't say much. I didn't either. It was over. And now, it was time to start acting like it. The first steps forward. For the first time in a long time, I started doing things just for me. I got back into running, something I had stopped doing because Lauren hated waking up early. I started planning a solo trip, something I never thought I'd do. I went to a bar with Marcus and let him introduce me to people, even though the idea of dating again still felt foreign. And little by little, I started feeling like myself again. I wasn't there yet. Not completely. But every day, I woke up feeling a little less hollow. A little more whole. And for now, that was enough. Moving on doesn't happen all at once. I had told myself that once Lauren was gone, once her things were out of the apartment, once the wedding was officially canceled, I would feel free. That's not how it worked. Grief lingers. Even when you know the person isn't right for you. Even when they betrayed you. Even when you were the one to walk away. Some days, I felt fine. Like I had dodged a bullet. Like I had woken up from a bad dream. Other days, I caught myself reaching for my phone to text her something stupid before remembering we didn't do that anymore. Even after all of it, part of me was still unlearning 5 years of habits. But time moves forward, even when you don't want it to. And before I knew it, 2 months had passed since the breakup. The last favor. The last thing connecting Lauren and me was the apartment. My name was on the lease, but her name was still on a few of the utilities. We hadn't been in contact since the last text exchange, and I was hoping to keep it that way. Then, out of nowhere, Karina, Lauren's sister, reached out. Karina, hey Daniel. I know this is random, but can we talk? I hesitated. Karina and I had always gotten along. She had been more supportive of my relationship with Lauren than Lauren had been at the end, but I had no interest in rehashing old wounds. Still, curiosity won. Me, what's up? A few minutes later, she called. I know you don't want to hear from her, she said carefully, and I wouldn't be asking if it wasn't important. I tensed. Lauren sent you to talk to me? No, Karina said quickly. She doesn't know I'm calling. That threw me off. I leaned back in my chair. Okay, what's going on? She hesitated. She's not doing great. I bit back a sigh. Not my problem. But Karina kept talking. Look, I'm not saying you should forgive her. She messed up. Bad. I told her that. But she regrets it. Regret. That word used to mean something to me. Now, it didn't change a thing. Karina, what do you want me to do with that information? She sighed. Nothing, I guess. I wanted you to know. Silence stretched between us. I finally spoke. She made her choice. And I made mine. I know. Karina's voice was quiet. I wish things had been different. So did I? But they weren't. I ended the call and stared at my phone for a long time. Then, for the first time in weeks, I went back through my photos. Not to dwell. Not to reminisce. But to delete. I wiped out everything. Our vacations. Our stupid selfies. The engagement pictures. I even deleted the playlist we had been making for the wedding. By the time I was done, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I hadn't realized how much space she was still taking up in my life, even after she was gone. Not anymore. The unexpected offer. One evening, Marcus and I grabbed drinks at a bar near his place. I hadn't told him about the conversation with Karina. I didn't want to get into it. But he must have sensed something because, halfway through his beer, he said, "You need a reset." I raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? He grinned. You remember Kenzo? The guy I work with? I nodded. Kenzo was an older guy, had been with Marcus's company for years. Seemed decent. He has a cabin up north, Marcus continued. Said I could use it any time. You should go. I frowned. A cabin? Yeah. Middle of nowhere, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just trees and a lake. Might be good for you. I considered it. For the past 2 months, I had been throwing myself into work, routines, distractions. Maybe it was time to do nothing. To just sit with myself. I took a sip of my drink. Yeah, maybe I will. The solo trip. A week later, I packed a bag, threw it into my car, and drove 5 hours into the wilderness. By the time I reached the cabin, the sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the lake. It was peaceful. No texts. No emails. No reminders of my past life. Just me. The first night, I sat on the porch, staring at the water. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I let myself think about it without anger. Lauren had made a mistake. I had made a choice. And we weren't meant to be. It was as simple as that. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run. Then I spent the day fishing, even though I was terrible at it. I read a book for the first time in months. And by the time the week was over, I felt lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, I was ready to stop looking backward. The last message. On my last night at the cabin, I got one final message from Lauren. I hadn't blocked her. I hadn't needed to. We just hadn't spoken. But now, after 2 months of silence, she sent one last text. Lauren, I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're doing okay. That was it. No expectations. No long explanations. Just an ending. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. I didn't need closure from her. I had already given it to myself. Moving forward. The day I got back, I found myself at my usual coffee shop. I was waiting for my order when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned and saw a woman I hadn't met before. She smiled. Hey, I think you dropped this. She held up my keys. I hadn't even realized I had dropped them. I took them, returning the smile. Thanks. She nodded, then hesitated before adding. You look familiar. Do you come here a lot? I smirked. Yeah, you. She laughed. First time, actually. We talked for a few minutes. Just small talk. Nothing serious. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something. Not love. Not a grand moment. But possibility. And for now, that was enough. Because the past was behind me. And the future? The future was wide open. It's strange how life moves forward even when you're standing still. After everything, after the breakup, the anger, the grief, the solitude. I thought I would be stuck in that limbo forever. But time didn't stop for me. And, eventually, neither did I. The woman from the coffee shop. Her name was Mia. It started as nothing, a simple exchange of words after she handed me my dropped keys. But sometimes, even the smallest interactions plant the seeds for something bigger. A week later, I ran into her again. Same coffee shop. This time, she was ahead of me in line. She ordered some complicated espresso drink, turned around, and laughed when she saw me. "You again." I smirked, starting to think you're following me. She raised an eyebrow. "Pretty sure I was here first." I shrugged. "Details." The barista handed her drink over, and she stepped aside, but instead of leaving, she lingered. Then, to my surprise, she asked, "Want to sit?" I hesitated. I hadn't done this since Lauren. But then, I thought, why not? And so, for the first time in months, I sat across from someone new. Not a date. Not anything romantic. Just a conversation. But, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was stuck in the past. The unlearning process. Moving on isn't about replacing someone. It's about reclaiming yourself. I had spent 5 years as part of a couple. 5 years thinking in terms of we and us. But now, I was learning how to be just me again. It was in the little things. Cooking meals without considering someone else's preferences. Picking a movie because I wanted to watch it, not because I was compromising. Taking an unplanned road trip just because I felt like it. I had been waiting for someone else to tell me that I was okay, that I was over it. But the truth is, healing isn't a destination. It's a process, and I was finally in the middle of it. The closure I didn't ask for. 3 months after the breakup, I got a call from Karina. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Hey, Karina." She sighed. "Hey, Daniel. I know this is unexpected, but I figured you'd want to know. Lauren's moving." I blinked. "Moving?" "Yeah. She got a job offer in Seattle. She's leaving next month." For a second, I didn't know how to react. Then, to my own surprise, I said, "Good for her." And I meant it. Karina hesitated. She wanted to tell you herself. But I figured you probably didn't want to have that conversation." She was right. I didn't. Because there was nothing left to say. I thanked Karina for letting me know, ended the call, and just sat with it. Lauren was leaving. The final string tying us together was about to be completely severed. And instead of feeling sad, or angry, or nostalgic, I felt free. The first real date. Mia and I had run into each other a few more times at the coffee shop. Every time, we talked a little longer. Laughed a little more. It was easy. Uncomplicated. And one afternoon, as I was leaving, she called after me. "Hey, Daniel." I turned. "Yeah." She hesitated, then smirked. "You know, if you ever want to grab coffee on purpose instead of by accident, let me know." A date. I hadn't thought about dating in months. But for some reason, with Mia, it didn't feel like some big, dramatic step. It just felt like the next thing. So I smiled. "Yeah, I'd like that." And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like I was stepping into something new. Something real. Something mine. The future is wide open. I won't lie and say that everything suddenly became perfect. There were still moments when I caught myself looking back. Moments when I wondered how things could have gone differently. But those moments became fewer and fewer. And one day, without even realizing it, I stopped checking my phone expecting to see Lauren's name. I stopped associating places with her. I stopped seeing my past as something I had to recover from, and instead, as something that had simply shaped me. Because the truth is, we don't just move on from people. We move forward. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready. I wasn't even planning to go to the party. That night, Janelle had sent me the invite on a whim, and I almost didn't respond. Work had drained me. I'd spent the entire week debugging lines of code that felt more like ancient scripture than modern systems. But something about the way she texted, "You need to stop rotting alone and talk to humans," made me feel seen, called out, but in a way only a friend who knew the silent parts of you could manage. So I threw on a denim jacket, rolled up my sleeves, and drove across town to her place. The moment I walked into that apartment, it was a jungle of half-empty wine glasses, candle smoke, and some indie playlist humming from Bluetooth speakers. Most of the guests were in cliques, circling around old inside jokes and holding tiny paper plates like shields. I scanned the room, offered a few nods to familiar faces, and headed to the snack table, classic social escape move. That's when I saw her. She stood alone near the chips and guacamole, wearing this off-shoulder mustard yellow top that somehow made her look both regal and like she had no idea she was beautiful. Her arms were crossed, and she had that unmistakable look of someone wondering if they should have just stayed home. No phone in hand. No fake texting. Just a girl standing quietly while the world around her buzzed without invitation. I don't know what pushed me to walk over. Maybe it was the fact that I hated seeing people feel out of place. Maybe it was the subtle way her eyes scanned the room, curious but cautious. Or maybe, just maybe, I was already a little bit doomed. I reached for the salsa, looked at her, and said, "I think this dip may have just filed a health violation." Her head snapped toward me, and for half a second, I panicked inside. What if she thought I was being weird? But then she laughed. And not that polite, haha, please leave me alone kind of laugh. No. This was deep and sudden and cracked open the air between us like a spark. That laugh, raw, real, a little raspy, shot straight through my chest. "That bad, huh?" she replied, raising an eyebrow as she reached for a chip. "Don't blame me when you end up with food poisoning by 3 a.m. I'll hold you personally responsible," she said, biting into the chip. We ended up talking for hours, standing right there by the snack table like the rest of the party didn't exist. She told me her name was Mariah. I told her mine was Julian. From there, it was easy. We didn't do that fake dating app banter, the resume-style introductions. We talked like old friends catching up. Her voice had this music to it, sometimes playful, sometimes low and thoughtful. She told me about growing up in Chapel Hill, about how she used to read books under her covers past bedtime with a flashlight. I told her how I used to take apart radios just to figure out how they worked. And sometimes, I couldn't put them back together. She laughed again at that. When the topic of exes inevitably came up, I treaded lightly, but she was open. She mentioned a long-term college relationship with someone named Tobias. She made it sound casual, like a memory packed away neatly in an attic box. It ended clean, she said. No big drama. Just realized we weren't each other's person. I nodded. I didn't press. It didn't feel like my place yet. But some part of me filed the name away. Not out of jealousy. Just awareness. The party thinned out around midnight. Janelle came over once, winked at me, and whispered to Mariah, "He's the least boring man in this room." Good pick. Mariah turned pink, but she didn't step away. At some point, she shivered slightly, and I instinctively offered her my jacket. She refused at first, but I insisted. That small act, that exchange of fabric and warmth, somehow felt like the start of something. When she finally took it and slipped her arms into the sleeves, I saw the faintest, softest smile settle on her lips. That moment still lives in the corners of my mind, like a photograph I never had to take. When I walked her to her car, I half expected the night to fold into silence. Instead, she leaned against her door, tilted her head, and said, "You're not like most guys." Is that a compliment or a red flag? She smiled. I'll let you know. I remember lying in bed later that night, jacketless, the scent of her perfume still faint on the sleeves, wondering why that laugh, the one she gave when I joked about the salsa, kept echoing in my mind. I wasn't one for romanticism. I was the logical one in most of my relationships. But with her, everything had felt so fluid, so easy, so warm. Within 2 months, we were seeing each other almost every weekend. We went to food truck festivals and late-night movies. We argued over music. She loved classic soul. I was a jazz man. She introduced me to her sister Riley, and eventually, I brought her to meet Malik, my closest friend. Everyone liked her. My mom called her sharp. My dad said she brought the light into my eyes. By month 6, we moved into a small place in Brookside. 1 bedroom, a temperamental heater, and a second-hand couch that sagged a little in the middle. But it was ours. On moving day, she stood in the middle of the empty living room, threw her arms in the air, and yelled, "We made a nest." And I laughed, because that's exactly what it felt like. The proposal came a year and a half later. Nothing flashy. Just the 2 of us, barefoot in the kitchen, flour on our shirts because we were making pizza from scratch. I knelt with a sauce-stained dish towel over my shoulder and held out the ring with a stupid grin. She said yes with tears in her eyes and flour on her cheek. At the time, I thought I had found the great love of my life. The kind of love that stories were made of. The kind that started with a laugh by the snack table and ended in forever. But forever is a word people say too easily. What I didn't know then was that sometimes, laughter can be the loudest beginning of something beautiful, or the quiet prelude to something breaking. And if I had known then how it all would end, maybe I would have held that first laugh a little longer. Memorized the sound of it, not just the feeling. Because years later, I'd be holding on to memories like that, trying to understand how a love that started so sincerely could drift so silently. But back then, I wasn't thinking about any of that. Back then, I was just a man falling for a woman who laughed like honesty and smiled like a promise. The first year of marriage was soft, like sunlight through curtains on a slow Sunday. I remember waking up with her beside me and thinking, this is what peace feels like. Our rhythms blended easily. Morning coffee routines, shared Spotify playlists, debates over whether to use the dishwasher or wash by hand. We fought about small things, sure. Everyone does. But it was the kind of fighting that ends with laughter or lazy apologies and kisses on the forehead. Our apartment smelled like cinnamon candles and fresh laundry. It sounded like her humming while brushing her teeth, or my keyboard tapping late at night while she read on the couch. The life we built wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Home wasn't a place. It was Mariah, and that made everything feel right. Both our families were relieved that we'd found each other. Her sister Riley was our unofficial third wheel. Malik became her basketball partner when I sprained my ankle. Dinners turned into game nights. Weekends melted into memory. I loved being her husband. She'd smile at me while we grocery shopped like it was still our honeymoon. She'd sneak sticky notes into my laptop bag. You got this, nerd. I still have one of them, pressed between receipts in my old wallet. There was something sacred in how simple our joy was. But then, there were the flickers. You don't notice the light changing at first. You just sense the room feels colder. That's how it started. Subtle things. Once, we bumped into an old friend of hers from college at a bookstore. The moment he said the name, Tobias, her whole body stiffened. Her smile was polite, a little too wide, like a mask. The way she laughed when he asked about him felt off, strained, high-pitched. As we walked away, I made a joke. You sounded like a politician dodging scandal just now. She laughed, but it didn't touch her eyes. I haven't thought about him in years, she said quickly. Too quickly. I didn't push. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous one digging into her past like it was treasure or poison. We all have history. I respected hers. I trusted her. But then came the holiday season. That year, Janelle came over for Christmas dinner. Her first time visiting as our guest. She brought wine and that laugh of hers that could fill a room. After 2 glasses, we started talking about college days, old memories. Mariah was giggling, relaxed, and then Janelle said it. Remember when Tobias showed up to that Halloween party dressed as a zombie professor? You almost threw your drink on him. Mariah laughed too loudly. She leaned forward, hands gripping the wine glass tighter than needed. Oh God, Tobias. He was such a mess, she said, biting her lip. I think he still has that ugly beard. I don't know what it was, but something in the way she said his name stuck with me. Not what she said, how she said it. Like she had to prove she didn't care. Like she wanted to laugh him off the map, but part of her brain still knew the roads back to where he lived. Later that night, I came into the living room and saw her on the couch, phone glowing in her hand. She was scrolling through Instagram. I leaned over the back of the couch and said, looking at old party pics? She jumped and locked her screen like a teenager getting caught. Just checking something, she said, brushing hair from her face. Was curious if Tobias still looked like a raccoon. I forced a chuckle. And she shrugged. Yep, still unfortunate. I didn't press. I walked into the kitchen and started washing dishes. But the sound of that screen locking stayed in my ears like a quiet siren. From that night forward, I noticed little shifts. She became more distant, barely at first. Shorter kisses. Slower replies. When we'd curl up on the couch, her body leaned a little farther away than it used to. The warmth wasn't gone. Just quieter. Fainter. I started doing more. Bringing home her favorite chocolate when I stopped at the gas station. Planning a surprise weekend getaway to Asheville. Taking on extra chores so she could rest. She said thank you. She smiled. But there was a hollowness behind it all. The kind of smile you give when someone gives you a gift you don't know what to do with. I told myself she was just stressed. Work had been hard on her. Deadlines. New responsibilities. She was pulling longer hours, commuting more. Maybe that was it. That had to be it. But one night, I came home late after a team meeting. She was in bed, pretending to sleep, but her phone was still in her hand under the blanket. Her breathing wasn't steady. Her shoulders were tight. I said nothing. Just changed clothes and lay beside her, back to back. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each of her slow, fake breaths. When she fell asleep for real, I quietly turned and looked at her face in the pale moonlight. She looked peaceful, but I wasn't. My gut was twisting, trying to decode every glance, every laugh, every moment I might have missed. There's a type of loneliness that hits you when you're right beside the person you love, and you still feel like a stranger in your own home. That loneliness was blooming in me, but I didn't want to accuse. I didn't want to lose what we had over a suspicion. She hadn't done anything wrong. Not really. She was just distant, distracted, and I wasn't going to be that insecure guy who picked a fight over old ghosts. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing. The woman who used to tell me everything now hesitated when I asked, "How was your day?" The woman who used to crawl into my lap with popcorn during movie night now sat at the other end of the couch, phone in hand, smiling at a screen instead of me. It was like living with a fading photograph, still familiar, still beautiful, but slowly losing its color. One day, I came home early and found her asleep on the couch. Her phone was unlocked beside her. I glanced at it. No notifications. No open apps. Nothing. Too clean. And that scared me more than if I had seen something suspicious. Because no one's phone is that clean. Not unless they're trying to make sure it is. I placed it back gently, covered her with a blanket, and sat by the window until she woke up. When she did, she smiled like nothing was wrong. And I smiled back like I didn't feel the gap growing wider with every passing day. Because that's what love does sometimes. It hopes a little longer. It believes even as it breaks. I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know that the cracks I saw were just the surface of something deeper. That the warmth I missed wasn't lost, it had been redirected. All I knew was that my wife, the woman who once lit up every corner of my world, had shadows behind her smile now. And I was beginning to fear those shadows weren't mine. There's a difference between being alone and feeling alone, and I learned that lesson slowly, painfully, from the person I once believed would never let me feel either. Mariah and I still shared a bed, still said goodnight, still lived under the same roof, but somewhere along the way, the connection between us turned into static. It was like reaching for a hand you know by heart, only to realize it doesn't reach back anymore. The warmth faded, not in a dramatic blaze, but in the quiet hum of routine silence. She started staying out later. At first, it was reasonable, long shifts at work, an after-hours strategy meeting, a friend's birthday dinner. But then the reasons started blending. One night it was Janelle wanted to talk. The next it was I needed to clear my head. There were nights she wouldn't even give an explanation, just walked in after 10 p.m. with tired eyes and half-mumbled words. I tried not to be the overthinking husband. I tried to give her space. But I wasn't blind. The little habits we once shared disappeared. She stopped making our Saturday pancakes, even though she'd once said those mornings were sacred. She started sleeping with her back to me, her phone clutched tightly to her chest like a second pillow. She'd smile, yes, but it was that kind of smile you give a polite coworker, not the person you've promised forever to. One Friday evening, I got home early. I cooked her favorite meal, lasagna with extra ricotta and garlic bread toasted just the way she liked. I lit candles, even put on her favorite Coltrane record. I wanted to remind her that love still lived here. She didn't come home until 11:30 p.m. I sat there with cold food, 2 glasses of wine untouched, and a sinking feeling that the version of us I loved was dissolving in real time. When she walked in, she looked surprised to see the table set. "Oh," she said, trying to smile. "You cooked. I thought we could eat together," I said, standing slowly. "It's been a while." She looked at the food, then back at me. "I already ate." Those 3 words hit harder than I expected. Not because of the food, but because she hadn't even thought to call. I covered the disappointment with a nod. "No problem." She didn't ask if I had eaten. She didn't say thank you. She just slipped out of her heels, said she was tired, and went to the bedroom. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the untouched plates. Eventually, I packed everything away, dumped my glass of wine down the sink, and sat on the edge of the bed, watching her sleep like a stranger I used to know. The silence between us became a language of its own, one we both understood but refused to translate. When I asked how her day was, her answers grew shorter. "Fine. Busy. Tiring. No stories. No details. Just roadblocks." I still made an effort. Still kissed her forehead when I left for work. Still brought home little things I thought she'd like. But the look in her eyes told me she wasn't really here, not fully. It was like she'd packed her bags emotionally and just hadn't told me yet. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. She was in the shower. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen lit from a notification. I wasn't the type to snoop. I'd never done it before in all our years together. But something told me to look, not to catch her, but to understand her. When I picked it up, it was spotless. No messages. No call logs. No social media apps. It was too perfect. I know what normal phones look like. They have clutter, notifications, group chats, late-night memes. But hers was like a demo model, clean, cold, untouched. I put it back exactly how I found it, and sat on the edge of the bed, hearing the water run behind the door, trying to make sense of the growing void. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because what could I even say? Why does your phone look like it's been wiped clean? Why don't you smile like you used to? Why does it feel like I'm living with a stranger who used to love me? Instead, I watched. I waited. I became quiet in my own house, studying the woman I married like she was a foreign language I once spoke fluently and now barely understood. Then came the moment that changed everything. One Tuesday, she left for work early. I had taken the day off, burnout creeping up on me, sleep hanging heavy under my eyes. Around noon, I heard her phone buzz from the coffee table. She had forgotten it at home. I stared at it for a while, then decided to leave it untouched. I figured she'd be back by evening. But at around 2:45, it rang again. It was Janelle. I hesitated, then picked it up. Hey, it's Julian. Mariah left her phone at home. There was a pause on the other end. Then Janelle said, "Oh, weird. I was calling to ask if she was still planning to meet me." My stomach twisted. Meet you? Yeah. We were supposed to get drinks today around 1. She never showed. Didn't text or call. I cleared my throat. She told me she was working. Another pause. A longer one. Oh, I'm sure there's a mix-up. Yeah, I said flatly. Probably. I hung up and sat there in the quiet, the weight of a single unanswered question pressing down on my chest. Where was she really? When she came home that night, I had already cleared the table. There was no music, no candles. Just me, sitting on the couch, holding the remote but not watching anything. She looked exhausted. Hey, she said. Long day. I nodded. Where were you? She blinked. At work. What? I stared at her. Janelle called. Said you didn't show up for drinks. She froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. The way her throat tensed, the way her eyes darted. I forgot, she said quickly. I had to cover a shift. It slipped my mind. I didn't say anything. Just stood up and walked past her. She followed. Julian, don't make this into something. I stopped and turned. You already did. She looked at me like she didn't know what to say, like the lies were piling too high for her to keep straight. I waited for her to speak, to explain, to be honest. Instead, she walked into the bedroom and closed the door. That night, I lay awake beside her while she slept soundly. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel safe beside her. I felt like I was waiting for something I didn't want to discover, but already knew. The distance wasn't growing anymore. It was already there. And I was starting to accept that whatever we had, whatever we were building, had been cracked in ways I couldn't name yet, but could feel in every quiet moment. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything knew. I was in the garage organizing tools I barely used anymore. Half of them were still in their boxes from when we moved in. I had taken the day off again, not because I was tired, but because I didn't want to pretend anymore. Pretend like things were okay. Pretend like my wife wasn't somewhere else in her mind, and maybe even her heart. That's when I heard the front door open, fast and frantic. I stepped out of the garage, wiping my hands on an old rag. She was standing there in the hallway, keys still in her hand, face pale and eyes wild. Julian, she said, almost breathless. I need you to take me to the hospital. I blinked. What happened? Tobias, she said, her voice cracking. He was in a car accident. A bad one. I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at her. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was trembling like the ground beneath her had just caved in. I need to see him, she whispered. Please. I stared at my wife. The same woman who had been pulling away from me inch by inch for months now, and all I could think was why him? But I didn't ask that. I didn't ask her why she wasn't calling Janelle or Riley or any number of people who would have understood her panic. She came to me. Her husband. And part of me hated how I still reacted instinctively, without anger, without questions. Get in the car, I said quietly. She nodded, grabbed her purse, and followed me out. The drive was silent. No music. No words. Just the sound of tires humming against asphalt and my heart pounding like it was stuck in my throat. I didn't ask how she found out. I didn't ask what hospital we were going to. She had already punched the address into my phone's GPS and sat there, hugging herself, as if she was trying to hold something together that had already fallen apart. About 15 minutes into the drive, she spoke. "I didn't think I'd feel this way," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't take my eyes off the road. I thought it was over. I really did. Still, I said nothing. When I heard he might not make it, something broke open in me. And that's when she said it. I still love him. There was no wind in the car. No sharp intake of breath. Just a sudden stillness that felt louder than any scream could have been. She didn't even look at me when she said it. She stared out the window like the words hadn't just shattered the remains of whatever trust one was clinging to. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I gripped the steering wheel harder. My knuckles whitened. I didn't even know how I kept driving. The turn signal clicked steadily as I changed lanes, as if the world was still spinning like normal. But inside me, everything had stopped. She still loved him. She didn't say, "I think I still love him," or "it brought back feelings." No, she said it like a fact. Like it had just been waiting in her all this time, crouched in a dark corner until a car crash forced it into the light. We pulled into the hospital parking lot. She unbuckled her seatbelt before I'd even turned off the engine. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. I didn't respond. She opened the door and stepped out. And just like that, she ran. Ran across the parking lot in her heels like she didn't care about the pain. Ran like her heart was inside that building. Ran like I didn't exist. She didn't look back. Not once. I watched her rush through the automatic doors. Watched as they swallowed her whole. And for a moment, I couldn't move. I just sat there, staring through the windshield, numb. I think I stayed parked for almost 20 minutes. There was this voice inside me, repeating the same sentence over and over. She ran to him. Not you. I didn't follow her in. I didn't want to see the way she might hold his hand, or the tears she might cry at his bedside. I didn't want to see the look in her eyes, the one I hadn't seen in months, that soft, aching tenderness that she used to reserve for me. Instead, I drove home alone. The house was dark when I walked in. Her coat still hung on the hook by the door. One of her heels, the one she must have kicked off in her panic, lay sideways in the hallway. I stared at it for a while. Strange, the things your mind latches onto when your life is quietly imploding. I walked into the bedroom. Her perfume still lingered in the air. I sat on the edge of the bed and took a deep breath. That was when it hit me. It wasn't just that she had feelings for someone else. It was that I was the one who had held her during her panic attacks. I was the one who stood by her when she lost her job for 2 months. I was the one who had made her feel safe in this world. And in the one moment when she needed someone the most, she didn't run to the man who had held her together for the past 5 years. She ran to the one who broke her first. I sat there for hours. I didn't eat. I didn't turn on the lights. I just stared at the door, waiting. Not because I wanted her to walk back through it, but because I needed to know if I was still the one she'd come home to. At 1:07 a.m., the lock turned. I didn't move. She walked in slowly, face red, eyes swollen. She froze when she saw me sitting in the dark. "Julian," she said, stepping forward. I stood up, walked past her, didn't even brush her shoulder. She turned as I reached the door. "Please," she whispered. It didn't mean anything. I just got scared. I didn't mean it. But she had meant it. Because the truth always escapes when we're afraid. And her truth came out in the quietest voice I'd ever heard. But it screamed louder than anything else ever could. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't have to. Some doors don't need to be slammed to say, "I'm done." They just need to be shut. When I woke up the next morning, the house was dead quiet. Not peaceful quiet, like the silence you find in a graveyard. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, still wearing yesterday's shirt. Her side of the bed looked like it hadn't been touched. The sheet still held her shape from the night before, but the warmth was gone, just like the rest of her. I didn't hear the shower running. I didn't smell coffee. That used to be her ritual, Sunday mornings, freshly brewed hazelnut, humming some old Lauryn Hill tune. But that morning, there was nothing. Just the dull hum of the fridge and the tick of the hallway clock reminding me every second was another beat away from the man I used to be. I didn't check the guest room to see if she'd slept there. I didn't look for a note, didn't call out her name. I already knew. Wherever she wasn't here, not in spirit, not in truth. I felt like a tenant in my own marriage. Like I'd been living with someone who moved out months ago but left her body behind, going through the motions while her heart sat in someone else's hands. I packed a small suitcase. Just the basics: 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts, a hoodie, socks, boxers, and my shaving kit. I took my passport and my birth certificate from the safe in the closet. Tossed them into the bag with my laptop. I didn't take anything that mattered to her. No gifts, no shared books, no framed photos. I wasn't trying to send a message. This wasn't revenge. This was release. As I zipped the bag shut, my eyes caught the wedding photo on the dresser. We were laughing in that picture. Real laughter. I remember what she whispered right before the photographer snapped it. "Don't ever let me forget this feeling." She forgot. And now, so would I. I walked to the kitchen, tore a sheet from the notepad on the fridge, and wrote exactly what I needed to say: no more, no less. "Don't worry. He can have you now." I didn't sign it. I didn't draw a line through it or add a dramatic flair. Just those 8 words, left on the counter beside her favorite mug, the one that said "Mondays made me do it." I stood at the doorway for a moment and looked around. It was strange how ordinary everything looked. The couch where we used to binge-watch crime documentaries. The kitchen where I once taught her how to dice onions without crying. The bookshelf we filled together on our 3rd anniversary trip to Asheville. I wasn't walking out of a home. I was walking out of a museum. One where the exhibits had lost all meaning. I locked the door behind me and didn't look back. I drove straight to Malik's place on the west side of town. He was my best friend since college, loyal, blunt, and never the type to pry unless you needed him to. When he opened the door and saw the suitcase, he didn't ask. He just stepped aside and said, "Guest room's clean." I set the bag down in the corner and sat on the edge of the futon. "Is it bad?" he asked, grabbing 2 beers from the fridge. I nodded slowly. "It's done." He handed me the bottle, then sat beside me without a word. We didn't toast. We didn't say anything poetic. We just sat there like 2 men watching a storm pass in the distance, knowing it had already hit one of them. Later that night, he ordered pizza, and we ate in silence. Every time his phone buzzed, I flinched a little, thinking maybe she was trying to reach me through him. She didn't, but I knew it was only a matter of time. That first night without her felt both unbearable and weirdly peaceful. I didn't cry. I didn't punch anything. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering how many lies had been wrapped in her goodnight kisses, wondering how many moments had been stolen while I was sitting across from her, pouring my soul into a marriage she was slowly draining from the inside. In the morning, my phone lit up. 5 missed calls. 2 voicemails. All from her. I didn't listen to them. I deleted them. But I did replay her voice in my mind, over and over. "I still love him." That phrase played like a scratched record in my head all day. I tried to distract myself, went for a walk, made a grocery list with Malik, even helped him rearrange the junk in his garage. But nothing could shake that sentence out of my bones. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was an erasure. She had erased the 5 years we built together in 5 words. That afternoon, I sat down at Malik's kitchen table and opened my laptop. I started listing out everything I needed to transfer: bank accounts, insurance, subscriptions, emergency contacts. My name was everywhere in her world, just as hers was in mine. Unraveling that web felt like peeling skin off an open wound, but I did it slowly, meticulously. By the evening, more messages came through. "Julian, please call me. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Can we talk? Just once." I turned my phone off. Not to spite her, just to breathe. It's wild how quickly someone can flip from choosing someone else to begging for your attention. One moment you're just the man she left behind in a parked car. The next, you're her anchor in a storm she created. But I wasn't her anchor anymore. That night, I slept better. Not because I was okay, but because I had made a decision. And decisions, even painful ones, bring clarity. She had chosen. Now I was choosing too. I wasn't going to fight for someone who ran toward her past when the world got hard. I wasn't going to compete with a ghost. I wasn't going to hold space for someone who offered me leftovers while giving her whole heart to someone else. Letting go wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And sometimes you have to pack your bag, write your truth on a piece of paper, and walk out, not because you want to, but because staying would mean disappearing. I didn't disappear. I reclaimed myself. And I left her exactly what she asked for. Tobias. I didn't turn my phone on for 3 days. Not because I was afraid of what I'd see, but because I already knew what would be waiting. The truth doesn't hide in silence. It screams in the background, even when your screen is black and your hands won't touch the power button. I needed the quiet. At Malik's place, I stuck to a routine. Wake up, make coffee, shower, sit in the small sunlit kitchen, scroll aimlessly through articles I didn't care about. I tried reading a book one morning, but the words kept sliding off the page, like my mind refused to hold anything new while still clinging to what it hadn't processed. Malik gave me space. No deep talks, no unnecessary questions, just silent support. He'd leave little things by the door, protein bars, water bottles, even a stress ball. Once he walked by with his gaming headset on, looked at me half smiling, and said, "Bro, you look like a man who just realized the chicken he cooked for years had a second family." I almost laughed. Almost. On the third morning, I took a deep breath and finally powered on my phone. The first thing that hit me was the buzz. It didn't stop for 15 seconds. When the screen lit up, it looked like a flood had broken through. 53 missed calls, 12 voicemails, 29 text messages. Every notification came from the same name, Mariah. I stood there in Malik's kitchen, staring at the screen like it was on fire. I didn't open anything at first. Just watched the messages stack themselves into a digital monument of regret. Eventually, I clicked on the first voicemail. I don't know why. Maybe part of me needed to hear it from her mouth again, to know she wasn't a dream I made up. That all this pain was real. That it came from a voice I used to fall asleep beside. Her voice came through shaky. "Julian, I don't know if you're getting these, but I'm sorry. Please. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean what I said in the car. I was panicked. I wasn't thinking straight. I closed my eyes." Funny how panic makes people tell the truth. I listened to another. "I went to the hospital again today. He's awake now, but I haven't gone in. I can't. I keep thinking about you. About what I said. About how you looked at me after. Please, can you just call me?" She left another voicemail that same night. "I know you hate me. I know you must. But I need you to hear me. Tobias isn't who I want. He was just a chapter one never properly closed. I thought I could bury the past, but when the accident happened, everything just spilled out. Another one. Quieter. I miss you. I miss the way you hold silence like it's something sacred. I miss your stupid humming in the shower. I even miss the way you correct my grammar when I'm texting too fast." I stopped listening after that. It wasn't that her words didn't affect me. They did. Deeply. But the damage was done. It wasn't the lie that broke me. It was the choice. In her rawest moment, in the kind of emotional emergency that strips people to their core, she ran to him. She reached into her heart and pulled out the truth. That truth didn't include me. Everything after that felt like damage control. Emotional PR. A cleanup crew arriving after the fire had already eaten the house. That day, I left Malik's place for a walk. It was drizzling, a light rain that barely soaked through but still chilled your bones. I walked without direction, just letting my feet carry me through the neighborhood. Every couple I passed holding hands felt like a billboard of something I'd lost. A version of love that had once been mine, now a foreign language I couldn't translate. I stopped at a bench near the dog park and sat, watching strangers laugh and toss tennis balls. Life kept going. The world didn't pause just because mine had cracked. I scrolled through her texts. Most of them blurred together. "I'm sorry. Please talk to me. You don't understand what I meant. I was in shock. It was a mistake. You're the one I love." I stared at that last one the longest. You're the one I love. That's the thing about love. It's only as real as the choices behind it. You can say the words 1,000 times. You can write them in the stars. But if your actions contradict them, they become empty. Hollow. Like saying I care while handing someone a blade. I wanted to believe her. I did. I wanted to think the accident shook her so hard it scrambled her thoughts. That maybe, just maybe, she said the wrong thing in the worst moment. That it was just panic. Confusion. But the truth had already burrowed its way inside me. She didn't just say I still love him. She whispered it like a confession. Like something she had buried so deep inside herself it came out like oxygen when the lid finally cracked open. And I wasn't going to unhear it. That night, Malik made spaghetti. We sat in front of the TV watching a dumb action flick, and I finally spoke. "She wants to fix it." He didn't look away from the screen. "Do you?" I thought about it. "No," I said. "I just want her to understand she broke something she doesn't get to glue back together just because she's sorry." He nodded slowly. "Good. That's called clarity. Hurts like hell, but it's clean." Later, when I lay in bed, I wondered how many more messages I'd wake up to. How many more apologies. How long it would take before she gave up. Before silence returned. Not as punishment, but as peace. I didn't block her. I wanted her to know that I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't coming back. Some people think forgiveness is returning to the person who hurt you. But sometimes, forgiveness is choosing not to let them do it again. And choosing yourself. Finally, it was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when Riley texted me. Can we talk? Coffee. Just us. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I didn't know what she wanted to talk about. Deep down, I had a pretty good idea, but because I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear it. Riley had always been the middle point between Mariah and the world. Not too invasive. Not too distant. She loved her sister, but she saw her clearly. Maybe more clearly than anyone else ever had. Still, it took me a full hour to respond. I finally typed out, sure. Where? And she sent the address to a cafe we all used to visit together, back when things were warm and simple. Before silence took over my marriage. Before I became the ghost Mariah left behind. I arrived early. Found a booth in the back, away from the windows. The place still smelled like cinnamon and roasted beans. I remembered Mariah used to get the same order every time, a hazelnut latte, 2 pumps, extra foam. I ordered black coffee. No sugar. I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. Riley walked in wearing jeans, a hoodie, and no makeup. She looked like someone who hadn't been sleeping much. When she saw me, she hesitated by the door, like she was deciding whether to stay or turn around. Then she took a breath and walked over. Hey, she said gently. I nodded. Hey. She sat across from me and wrapped her hands around a mug she didn't drink from. Her fingers were trembling slightly. I watched her, waiting. I wasn't going to break the silence first. I didn't come here to defend her, she said finally. Good, I replied. She nodded again, eyes focused on the mug. I came because you deserve to know what she didn't say. My chest tightened. She didn't cheat, Riley said softly. Not in the physical sense. But she crossed lines. Emotional ones. Deep ones. I leaned back, closed my eyes briefly. How long? Riley sighed. It started small. A few messages after they bumped into each other at Naomi's wedding last year. At first, it was just catching up. Then it turned into late-night texts. Then venting. About work. About you. About the life she felt she settled into. That word stung. Settled. I looked at her, my voice low. She told you this? She confessed a few months ago. Said it was harmless. Said she just needed someone to talk to who knew her before everything felt routine. But I knew what was happening. I told her she was playing with fire. That she couldn't keep one foot in your life and the other in his past. I allow. When she found out Tobias was hurt, everything she'd buried came up fast and messy. She told me she still loved him, I said, staring into my coffee. Riley looked devastated. She didn't mean it that way. I raised an eyebrow. I'm not excusing it, she added quickly. But she said it like someone drowning in memories. Like she confused the man with the moment. Like she panicked and grabbed for the last version of herself that ever felt completely free. I didn't respond. My heart was already tired of interpreting Mariah's mess for her. She's a wreck now, Riley continued. She keeps asking me if you'll ever come back. Keeps saying she didn't know what she had until it was gone. I smirked without humor. Funny how people always realize they love you most after they've destroyed you. Riley wiped her eyes. She's still my sister, Julian. But I told her the truth. She doesn't get to play the victim in this. She made the mess. She broke the man who always showed up for her. That sentence settled heavy in the air. I finally asked, why tell me all this? You could have stayed out of it. Because I watched you love her, she said, eyes shining. I watched you pour yourself into that marriage. I watched you shrink to give her space. I watched you carry the whole thing when she didn't even realize she dropped it. Her voice cracked, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. I looked away, swallowing the lump in my throat. I told her it's over, Riley added. That if you do come back, it'll be a miracle. That she burned the bridge, and now she's stuck holding the ashes. I looked up, our eyes locking. I'm not coming back. Riley didn't flinch. She nodded slowly. I figured. But I thought you deserved to hear it from someone who wasn't hiding behind excuses. The silence between us was softer this time. Not heavy, just tired. Before I left, Riley reached into her bag and slid something across the table. A photo. An old Polaroid from our 3rd anniversary. Mariah and I at the lake house, wind blowing through her hair, my arms around her waist. We were laughing at something silly and probably forgettable, but our faces were pure joy. She almost threw this away, Riley whispered. But I saved it. Thought, maybe you'd want to remember the part that was real. I stared at the photo. My chest ached with memory. I didn't cry. but I felt everything all at once. I took the photo and slipped it into my jacket. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For being honest." She smiled, small and sad. "I wish it had turned out different." "Me too," I said quietly. We stood. No hugs. Just a nod. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not whole. But lighter. Like someone had finally pulled the last splinter out and let the wound breathe. I sat in my car for a few minutes before turning the ignition. I looked down at the photo again. Our smiles. That moment, that version of us was gone now. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Some truths come from pain. Others from silence. But the hardest ones? They come from the people who watched it all happen and finally couldn't stay quiet. I agreed to meet her in public. Not because I wanted to talk, but because it felt necessary. Like putting a final brick in a wall I already knew had to be built. We chose a neutral spot, a quiet little restaurant downtown with wooden booths and flickering candles, the kind of place meant for slow conversations and soft goodbyes. She picked the booth by the window, just like she always used to. I spotted her before she saw me. Her hands were folded in her lap, knuckles pale, and her eyes were locked on the condensation sliding down her glass of water like it held all the answers she couldn't find in me. I approached slowly, not out of hesitation, but because something in me wanted to remember this. The way she looked, the weight she carried. I had spent years studying her expressions, decoding the little shifts in her smile, the flicker in her eyes when she was hiding something. But today, she wore no mask. Her grief was open. Her body slumped. Her eyes tired. When I sat down, she looked up. No words at first. Just a sharp inhale like she didn't expect to actually see me again. "Hi," she whispered. "Mariah." She tried to smile, but it broke midway. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, glancing around the quiet room. Only 2 other tables were occupied. Perfect. No audience. No distractions. Just truth. She reached for her glass and took a sip, as if stalling, and then finally said it. "I messed everything up." I didn't nod. I didn't interrupt. I didn't even realize how much until the night you left. When I came home and saw the note, I didn't know how to breathe. "You seemed to breathe fine when you were running into that hospital," I said. My voice wasn't angry, just level, measured. She winced. "I know. You told me you loved him, Mariah. Do you understand that? Not that you missed him. Not that you panicked. You said you still loved him." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean it. I swear. I was in shock. He almost died. It pulled me into this memory of who I used to be, and—" "Don't," I said, calmly. "Don't twist it into poetry. This isn't a memory. It's a decision. You made one. I just finally accepted it." She leaned forward, wiping her eyes. "Julian, I've been trying to explain. What I said that night wasn't the full truth. I don't love him. Not really. I loved who I was when I was with him, young, reckless, unbroken. But that doesn't mean I wanted him. I wanted you. I want us." "You wanted me?" I repeated, bitterly. "So you deleted your messages, lied about where you were, hid an emotional affair. And when the man you claimed not to want almost died, you ran straight to him." She went quiet. Her throat tightened. "I didn't go there to rekindle anything. You went there because your heart never stopped echoing his name. And I was just background noise." "No," she said quickly. "You were never noise. You were everything. You were safety. You were home." I chuckled, cold and quiet. People don't run toward home when they're scared. They run toward what they still dream about. She looked down at her hands. "I never meant to hurt you." "I believe that," I said. Her eyes shot up, surprised. "I believe you didn't plan to hurt me. But love isn't judged by intent. It's judged by impact. And your impact was an emotional sledgehammer." Mariah looked like she was shrinking into herself. Her shoulders curled, her hands twisted in her lap. "I know I don't deserve another chance," she whispered. "You're right," I said, voice soft but firm. "You don't." The words hung in the air like a verdict. And for a moment, she didn't breathe. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm not here to drag this out," I said. "I'm here to close the door you left open." She nodded slowly. "You want a divorce?" "I already spoke to a lawyer," I said. "You'll get the papers this week. I'm not going to make it ugly. I'm not taking anything that's yours. I just want peace." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Then finally, through tears, "I didn't fall out of love with you. You just didn't love me enough to protect what we had," I said. "And that's worse." We sat in silence. The waitress came by and dropped off the water pitcher, then paused, sensing the tension. She walked away quietly. I keep waking up and reaching for you, Mariah said. Then remembering you're gone. I wake up and remember I'm free, I replied. That used to scare me. But now it just feels clean. She looked devastated. But this wasn't the time for her feelings. Not anymore. She'd had months to decide where her heart lived. She chose. So did I? I still have the anniversary gift you never opened, she said softly. It's in the top drawer of my nightstand. I shrugged. Maybe give it to him. That's not fair, she snapped suddenly. Don't reduce me to that one moment. You of all people should know I'm more than a mistake. No, I said, standing. You were more. You just chose to be less. She flinched. I didn't enjoy saying it. I just needed her to understand the finality. I pulled out a small envelope from my coat pocket and laid it on the table. Her name written in my handwriting. What's this? She asked. Closure, I said. Everything I needed to say but no longer want to say out loud. She didn't reach for it. She just stared at the table, face flushed with shame and something close to desperation. I wish I could go back, she whispered. You don't get to, I said gently. I left her sitting there, hands trembling over her glass, tears on her cheeks, my name likely echoing in her mind in all the ways she didn't say it when it mattered most. As I stepped into the evening air, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. The sky was turning a soft gold, the sun beginning to drop behind the buildings. I stood there on the sidewalk, breathing in that moment like oxygen I'd been deprived of for too long. There was no going back. But finally, I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. The letter came 2 weeks after we last spoke. I recognized the handwriting immediately, curved, careful, the kind she only used when something truly mattered. She used to leave me notes in this script, tucked in my jacket pocket, on the bathroom mirror, in my lunch when I was working long shifts. I used to love her handwriting. Now, holding that envelope, I wasn't sure I wanted to read a single word of it. It had no return address, just my name, no heart beside it like before, just clean, black ink. Julian. I stared at it for a while, sitting on the couch in Malik's apartment, where my life had quietly reset. My bag was still in the corner, unpacked. I hadn't hung a single shirt in the closet. I think part of me was still holding on to the illusion that this was temporary, that I'd be going home soon. But that word had changed. And this letter, whatever it was, felt like a key to a door I no longer wanted to open. Still, I opened it. It was 4 pages long, handwritten. No smudges. No scribbled out lines. Like she'd written it carefully, thoughtfully. Like she wanted every word to hit exactly where it needed to. The first sentence hit harder than I expected. I don't expect this to fix anything. She continued. By the time you read this, you've probably already filed everything. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you're done with me for good. But I needed to say this, not for your forgiveness, but for your understanding. And if I'm being honest, for my own sanity. I shifted in my seat. I've spent the last 2 weeks going over everything. Every conversation. Every decision. Every moment I chose silence instead of honesty, distance instead of presence, and safety instead of truth. Because that's what it was. Tobias was safe. He didn't demand anything of me. He didn't challenge me to grow. He lived in a memory where I was 22 and wild and adored. And when he got hurt, it triggered something deep and unspoken. It wasn't about love, it was about escape. I paused reading. That line sat like lead in my chest. It wasn't about love, it was about escape. That explained a lot. But it didn't change the outcome. It didn't undo the damage. Still, I kept reading. You were the real thing. The hard, messy, magnificent thing. You saw me, all of me, and still chose me. That scared me more than I admitted. Being loved that deeply meant I had to live up to it. I had to stay consistent, present, honest. And I didn't know how to hold on to something that pure without wondering when I'd ruin it. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, the letter trembling slightly in my hands. When I said I loved him, I didn't mean it like that. But I know how it sounded, and I know you heard it clearly. I don't blame you for walking away. In fact, I respect it, because you've always been the one who honored truth, even when it hurt. That's what I couldn't do. That's why you were the better half of us. That line broke something in me. I wasn't looking for revenge. I never was. But hearing her say it, admit that she saw the difference between us, between who stayed loyal and who ran, that mattered. Even if it came too late. I've replayed that car ride in my head so many times. I wish I could pull the words back into my mouth. I wish I had turned to you instead of looking away. I wish I had seen you sitting there, hurting, and stopped running towards someone who no longer knew me. But the truth is, I didn't stop. And you did. You stopped everything. The dinner plans. The forgiveness. The waiting. You stopped carrying us when I let go. I breathed slowly, folding the top of the page back. I keep dreaming about the little things. The way you used to sing to the dog on bath day. The way you always read cereal boxes at breakfast like it was breaking news. I miss that. I miss the way our silence felt safe, not awkward. I miss our rhythm. The world is so quiet now. Too quiet. She had signed the final page differently. No dramatic declarations. No last-ditch promises. Just this. I don't ask for another chance. I only ask that, in some quiet part of you, you remember we were real. That even if we ended in silence, we lived in love. For a while. And it mattered. I folded the letter and held it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just let myself feel it fully. It didn't make me want her back. It didn't make me second-guess the decision I'd made. But it did do something else. It gave the past a little peace. Because in that moment, I realized something important. We weren't defined by the way we ended. We were defined by the fact that, for a long stretch of time, we were two people who chose each other, flawed, scared, trying. And even though she failed me in the end, even though she turned away when I needed her to turn toward me, I still carried the best of what we were. That didn't mean I'd ever go back. It meant I could move forward without bitterness. I placed the letter in a small wooden box I kept in Malik's spare room. It held a few old things, photos, cards, a gift from my late grandmother. The letter didn't belong with my clothes or wallet or phone. It belonged with memories. Things you respect but no longer carry every day. That night, I slept better. I didn't check my phone when I woke up. I didn't wonder if she would write again. I didn't hope or dread. I just breathed. And for the first time since I'd left, the breath didn't catch in my throat. I moved on a Wednesday. The kind of day that's too ordinary to carry any grand significance. No birthday. No holiday. Just a regular middle-of-the-week morning. Gray clouds hanging low like someone had draped the sky in damp cotton. It wasn't planned that way. My new lease just happened to start then. Funny how life moves forward on dates that don't feel dramatic. Healing, it turns out, doesn't wait for a perfect backdrop. I loaded the final box into the back of my truck. Just a few clothes, a lamp, a record player, and that small wooden box with the letter from Mariah. I didn't open it again. I hadn't since the day it arrived. But I didn't throw it away either. Some parts of your life don't belong in the trash. They belong in the past, intact, unopened, but respected. Malik came outside with 2 mugs of coffee. So this is it, he said, handing me one. This is it, I replied. He raised his mug. To growth, pain, and starting over. I clinked mine against his. To silence that finally feels like peace. We stood there for a moment on the driveway like brothers saying goodbye, even though we knew we'd still see each other. Malik wasn't just my friend. He was the witness to the most difficult stretch of my life. The person who never asked for details but always made space for my silence. That kind of loyalty doesn't get acknowledged enough. But it should. Think she'll sign the papers? He asked quietly. She already did, I replied, glancing toward the glove box. A week ago. He nodded like that confirmed something he already knew. And you're good. I paused, watching a squirrel dart across the yard, then looked back at him. I'm not angry anymore. Just done. The drive to the new place was about 2 hours outside the city. I found it on a whim, a small cottage nestled on the edge of a quiet town called Fairgrove. It wasn't flashy. The rent was affordable. The neighbors seemed the right kind of nosy. But most importantly, it was mine. A place untouched by her. A place without memories woven into the curtains or the scent of her shampoo lingering in the air. The first thing I did when I arrived was let Moxie out of her crate. She was a rescue, half border collie, half mystery, all energy. I'd adopted her 3 weeks earlier after walking into a shelter just to look around. That lie lasted exactly 8 minutes. She had pressed her forehead against the glass and looked at me with those wise, questioning eyes like she already knew my story. Now, she bounded through the empty living room, tail wagging like a metronome for joy. Yeah, I said, smiling. We're gonna be okay. I spent the day unpacking, building shelves, and making a playlist I could hum along to without memories interrupting the melody. I set up the record player last, placing Coltrane's ballads on it like a quiet nod to who I was before everything cracked. That evening, I walked to the nearby lake. It was still reflective, like it knew how to hold quiet better than most people. I sat on the bench overlooking the water. Moxie curled up beside me and let the stillness fill the spaces where grief had once camped out. It didn't feel heavy anymore. It just felt real. I thought about her once, Mariah, not in anger, not even in sadness, just as someone I used to love. Someone who had walked into my life at a birthday party with guacamole on her wrist and a laugh that made me forget my own name. Someone who once made me believe in forever. And someone who, when it mattered most, ran in the other direction. I had spent so many nights trying to understand why. Why she said what she did. Why she couldn't stop herself. Why I wasn't enough. But the truth is, sometimes love isn't about logic. Sometimes people leave, not because you're lacking, but because they're lost. And no amount of loyalty can guide someone back to themselves if they don't want to return. I looked down at Moxie. She was watching a duck waddle by, tail twitching with interest. You've got it all figured out, don't you? I asked her. She licked my hand once, like an answer. Back at the house, I made pasta, poured a glass of red wine, and wrote in my journal for the first time in months. It wasn't anything profound, just thoughts, scattered but honest. I used to think love had to last to matter, that if something ended, it meant it was fake. But now I see that some love stories are just chapters, not entire books. In some chapters, you close not with bitterness, but with a quiet nod to the lessons they taught you. I closed the journal, placed it on the nightstand, and climbed into bed. Moxie followed, curling at my feet like she'd always been there. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, waiting for the ache to return. It didn't. Not this time. A week later, I went into town and signed up for a local woodworking class. Not because I was good at it, far from it, but because I needed to make something again. With my hands. With my time. With my heart. I met a few people. Shared a few laughs. Talked about old music, not old wounds. It felt good. One afternoon, Malik called. Just checking in. You building a cabin or a new personality out there? I laughed. Both. You sound lighter. I am. He paused. She called me. I figured. She's dating again. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Good.